Hey gals and guys, this is Michael Ferrari of Cinema de Meep. Welcome to the 5th Patreon bonus episode. I'm so happy we can get one out to you this month, and I'm joined by a very special guest, a good friend and longtime supporter of Retro Movie Love and our Patreon, Ara Alishan. Say hello, Ara.
Hey everyone. Hey Meep, thanks for having me on, buddy.
Thank you for joining me on this episode. It means a lot that you've been so supportive and so kind and just getting the word out with Retro Movie Love that I just wanted to just kind of celebrate it with you and doing a Patreon episode with you. And I know we both share common interests in movies. We there's definitely some genres that we both love, and one of them happens to be the action movie genre. And we were thinking of like what to record together, and I think we ended up landing on this subgenre of movies because it's something we both kind of grew up with when watching. And what is that today?
Well, that is prison movies, which I'm very excited to talk about with you.
Likewise, I grew up definitely with prison movies. It wasn't that I was initially drawn to them. My grandmother was huge into prison movies, as she was into cannibal movies and exploitation movies growing up. So any prison movie that was new, a new release, or was on the shelf that she liked, I would rent it for her. And so I got to watch many prison movies, especially women in prison movies. We seem to gravitate towards those a little bit more. But there was a lot to choose from in the 80s, for sure.
Absolutely.
A lot of them came out of the 80s, and as we know, this podcast is devoted to movies from the 80s and 70s and 90s and so on. So I'm definitely going to highlight a few of those today, and I'm glad I can get your point of view on them because looking at your list, there's a lot of good, fun movies on there as well, and I'm excited to talk about it. And we're not going to dive too deep into like the classic example of the prison movie. There were lots of prison movies before the 60s. There were a good deal of noirs that involved prisons, and there's the long history of the prison movie in general. And since we focus more on that more like 70s, 80s, and 90s kind of point of view, so we're not going to go into that territory. But we do acknowledge there were lots of great prison movies before a lot of our titles on the list, and I definitely do watch some of those and go back to some of those. But I would like to talk about some of these fun ones today with you. And let's get, before we get into that, let's talk about what we've been watching recently. How about you?
Oh, sounds good to me. So it's interesting, actually, that we chose this topic for this month, because I want to say it was really a perfect palate cleanser between Halloween and October, watching all these Halloween-related movies, mm-hmm. and then gearing up to get into all these Christmas movies now. So I've been watching a lot of prison movies, obviously, which we're not going to get into, but I did want to touch on a few movies that I've heard you talk about that I just kind of wanted to throw in my 2 cents
Sure.
For anyone out there who might be listening. Last month I did go to the theater twice with my wife, and we saw 2 movies that I had varying levels of expectations for, which I think might have played a role in how I felt about them. And the first movie I want to mention is the new Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been looking forward to that ever since they announced it. I try not to get my expectations up too high with any movie. And I believe I even saw a few lukewarm to negative reactions from people whose opinions I trust, like yourself, before I saw it. Mm-hmm. We did see it opening weekend, but somehow we were like the last people to see it still. I just didn't like it. And I was so disappointed. I lowered my expectations. I went in just hoping it's fun. I didn't care that they were changing the continuity because, part 2 will always be there. Part 3 will always be there. Part 4 will always be there. The movies that I like to watch are always going to be there. So I went in with an open mind. I lowered my expectations. But even just from the opening, stylistically, there was just something about it that really rubbed me the wrong way. I feel like it, and I feel bad saying this because it's better than the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. Of course, it has Jamie Lee Curtis in it. How could it not be? But stylistically, I feel like it shared more DNA with those movies. Even just the way some of the deaths were handled.
Sure.
And some of the characters, just I don't know, it just wasn't what I was hoping for. So I'm sure I'm probably losing credibility with listeners right off the bat because I know a lot of people loved it and have been singing its praises, but it was a real bummer to me. It just wasn't what I wanted. I think Halloween 1 and 2 are kind of perfect together. This for years I kind of rejected everything after 3. 3 has been my favorite for as long as I can remember, and I feel like that's kind of gained some popularity over the years, which I'm happy about. But after that, I would always kind of dismiss them and thought, 2 had the perfect ending. Well, 1 had the perfect ending, really.
Sure. Yeah.
With him just kind of disappearing into the night. But 2 had the perfect ending with, basically sending Michael Myers off in flames and killing off him and Dr. Loomis pretty definitively. It would have seemed, but it's a slasher movie franchise, and they went back to it. And I've recently started loving Part 4, and I want to get into some of the other ones. So I think H2O is fun. I grew up loving that one, and watched it again this year. So I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to say I have an open mind about the series as a whole, and there's just something about this one that it just didn't click with me. I feel like it could have used Dean Cundey, and I feel like everything was shot really close and really fast, and it didn't feel like Halloween to me.
It felt like exactly how they shot it. They shot it fast. They shot it on the cheap. There wasn't a lot of it didn't feel as composed as John Carpenter's original. It was, it's a different. Yeah, it was definitely going to be a different movie stylistically because it's a different director, different DP, different point of view. Yeah. But it really, because the movie tries so hard to integrate itself with the original film and even the sequels by homaging the sequels,
absolutely.
It tried to have it all, and it just didn't work because it was trying to be something different as well, and just I don't know.
Yeah, exactly, and I felt guilty almost because we went with, as my wife and I, and then my sister and her husband and my brother was with us too, and everyone seemed to like it except for me and my brother, and we felt guilty almost. It's like we couldn't put it into words why we didn't like it, but
right, it's like
I don't know. I've had more time to digest it, and it's just I don't know. It's just not what I was hoping for.
I guess I'm just gonna always look at it this way. It's a decent slasher movie. But as a Halloween movie, I'd rank it pretty low. Just
I hope it makes tons of money, and I hope it sets off a big boom, and we can maybe get a lot more slashers. That's always a good thing.
I'm all for it. Anything else?
I will just say one more thing about that movie was I did love John Carpenter's soundtrack. I feel like it was. Maybe because I wasn't as much into the movie, I was really paying attention to the soundtrack, and I just really enjoyed it. It's just, I feel like he should do the score for like every horror movie or every movie in general, but if he's not going to direct anymore. But yeah, that's a topic for another time. Oh, and I'll also just mention really quick, because I know we have a lot to get to. I grew up... I guess just to lose a little more credibility, I wasn't even born until 1982. So I grew up watching kind of all these movies jumbled up, and I just always thought Michael Myers was Laurie's brother. So I don't remember what order I saw the movies in. It was just something I grew up with. So when I got older and I realized that wasn't even referenced in the first one and is revealed in the second one, I mean, it was like nothing. It had like no effect on me. It was like Darth Vader being Luke's dad, you know. It was just part of the lore. So I don't know. I know that rubs some people the wrong way, and this was like a course correction or whatever. But honestly, it's, you know, I could take that or leave it. That seemed kind of unnecessary, and it also took away a little bit from his mystique as a mass murderer from only having the events from Halloween 1 being canon. I felt, but I mean, you know, we can save all this for the Halloween podcast. So. I'll say the other movie I went and saw in theaters that I had much lower expectations for was Hellfest. And we had a really hard time finding a theater playing it, and we missed a few opportunities to see it when it was more available, and then it was almost out of theaters. It was like the end of the month. And we went over here to Universal City Walk here in LA. It was the only theater within like 30, 40 miles that was showing it. And they had like one showtime. And we just kind of made a date night out of it, and we both really enjoyed it, surprisingly. I don't know. It's hard to say what I liked about it. It's nothing special, but it just is kind of sticks to the basics, and I thought it was a lot of fun. We like to go to all those like haunted attractions. Like we'll go to Halloween Horror Nights or the Queen Mary and, you know, stuff like that out here every year. So maybe it was a little bit more in our ballpark to have a slasher set in that kind of, you know, environment. But it just really worked, and it felt like it kind of fit into that whole wave of movies we got in the 2000s, like I'm trying to think of some, like House of Wax, I want to say was one of them. It felt like it kind of fit in that way, but it would have been one of the good ones. And I don't know, I liked it. It's a movie that I might even pick up when it comes out on you know, DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. I'm surprised, but yeah, I liked it. I think it's a movie I wouldn't mind adding into the mix every Halloween.
Yeah, I was the same way with it. You know, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's like you said, it's not something special in terms of it wasn't a high profile release. It wasn't something that was going to be any kind of masterwork. But you can't go into that with genre films all the time. Sure. I feel like you need to have kind of a bit of a throwaway, but as long as it's well done and fun. And I think we need to appreciate those more as genre fans, because if we don't appreciate these kinds of movies now, then we're not going to get anymore. We're just going to get movies that are just going to be for more of a mass audience, and or just like have to be like a masterpiece. You know,
exactly.
We need to appreciate
it doesn't have
ones.
to be an event. Like not every movie has to be an event movie. You know, sometimes there's the quieter ones that kind of slip by, and I think we should, you know, give them more attention, give them a chance.
Yeah, and it does exactly that. It's 90 minutes of like being in a haunted attraction, and that's exactly if you're in the mood for that, that's exactly what you're gonna get, and it's that much fun. So
yeah, absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, speaking of Halloween movies, you reminded me there was another movie I wanted to mention that's an older movie that you mentioned recently, I want to say on the teen horror episode. And this is a movie that I avoided for a long time because I thought the DVD artwork was so generic and terrible. It just didn't look interesting to me at all, and that's Trick or Treat from 1986. And I actually watched it along with my, you know, all the other Halloween stuff I watched this year. I ended up picking it up because there was a really cool looking German release that had, you know, more appealing artwork, kind of caught my attention. And I really loved it. I've got to say, I really loved that movie. And there's something I wanted to mention, because I know you guys just talked about it, so we don't have to get too much into it. But so growing up as a kid in the '80s, we had Showbiz Pizza. I don't know if you guys had that out on the East Coast, but we had it here, and I grew up in Salt Lake City actually, and we had Showbiz Pizza before it became Chuck E. Cheese. And there was an animatronic band called the Rock-afire Explosion that used to terrify me when I was a kid. I mean, I remember standing like pretty close to them and just being like scared out of my mind. And this movie that has this big Halloween party scene where somebody is dressed up like the bear, Billy Bob. I want to say his name's Billy Bob. I want to say it's Billy Bob Broccoli, but I could be wrong about the last name being Broccoli. I don't know. But someone's dressed up like that bear in the background of this Halloween party, and you even see him put on a stretcher when things start getting crazy. And it just brought the biggest smile to my face. It was just such a rush of nostalgia. I feel like this movie, it just had so many things going for it that I can't believe I put it off for this long. I really loved it. I'm telling you, the fact that they had somebody dressed up like that bear was just... I never thought I was going to see that in a movie. It just was awesome.
It's funny, I didn't pick up on that because I guess I didn't grow up with that. We didn't have that in New York. We had Chuck E. Cheese later on, but I think, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, just one of those things. I mean, maybe somebody out there remembers that creepy animatronic band. So just look out for that next time you watch the movie, because I don't know, it just it made me really happy to see that in a horror movie. So that's all I'm going to mention as far as the Halloween stuff I watched. Mm-hmm. I will say after Halloween, I was still kind of in that fall mood, so I watched Scarecrows from 1988.
Oh, I haven't seen that in a while. How's that hold up?
You know, I remember not being crazy about it when I saw it before. I don't remember when that would have been, but I remember it just being kind of dark and, like gory, but not in a fun way. And I gotta say, I watched the Scream Factory Blu-ray, and I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's kind of like an action horror hybrid in a way, because you've got this like paramilitary group of thieves basically trying to escape from a big job they did and fly across the border. And I don't know how they supposedly they should be somewhere around San Diego, but it looks like they're in Iowa or something. I don't know when they go down, but I really had a lot of fun with it. I actually ended up picking up another release of this movie too to go along with the Scream Factory one, because I thought it had such cool artwork. It was as a German release. They had a media book under the title Paratrooper, and it looks like an action movie. It's like a bunch of guys with machine guns and stuff like that on the cover, which is really misleading. But I mean, it is the squad that gets picked off. So I really loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm happy I gave it another chance. I think I'm learning as I get older. There's a lot of movies that I need to watch again. Mm-hmm. And this is one that I'm glad I did. And if it wasn't for Scream Factory, I probably wouldn't have done that. So thank you to Scream Factory.
Speaking of Scream Factory, I have been watching a lot of stuff. I've been definitely buying a lot more stuff lately. I picked up Candyman and Urban Legend 1 and 2. I managed to find a sale online and utilize it for these pricey commodities. And the Critters box set as well came in recently. So I have a lot to watch.
That's awesome, and always a good thing
with those sets. And then, God, we've been watching some terrible movies. Like, we watched Daddy's Home 2. Sorry, I'm admitting that on a podcast, especially a podcast about prison movies. It felt like a prison while watching it, but
what's Daddy's Home 1? I don't remember.
I don't even know. Mark Wahlberg and
Will
Ferrell being silly.
Will Ferrell, right? Okay.
This time the added bonus of John Lithgow and Mel Gibson playing their dads, so we get to enjoy that holiday treat.
Awesome.
Which culminates in a final act in a movie theater. So, that part was, I like that it was set in a movie theater towards the end, but otherwise terrible. The Tie That Binds. I recently rewatched that on Blu-ray. That came from Kino Lorber. There was a Kino Lorber sale, I want to say last month, and I bought a few things.
Oh, very cool.
The Manhattan Project was in there, Color of Night, a few other things, and I rewatched The Tie That Binds and Manhattan Project, and both of them look great on Blu-ray, and they were fun to watch. Manhattan Project especially, I have the DVD of that. There was like a special edition DVD that came out, somewhere in the 2000s. I enjoyed that. I saw it as a kid in the theater. I was like the perfect age for it. I was like 11 when it came out. So,
sure, yeah.
So it was like a fun movie, science-based comedy adventure. There was some funny stuff in it, but it's more like this kid who's smart, and he basically steals plutonium so he can make a bomb. Which I don't know if they would do that anymore in a movie, but like a whimsical movie about a kid stealing plutonium to make a bomb to prove a point seems like kind of a stretch these days. But it was it's very entertaining. It's a very well made movie. Marshall Brickman did it.
Awesome.
He did Risky Business. He wrote like Annie Hall, right? Co-wrote Annie Hall or Manhattan, one of those two, and it's very well done, and I had a lot of fun revisiting it. And John Lithgow, again, he's in that, and he's really good. So I had fun watching that. And then lastly, on Netflix, there is a new Christmas movie. Since we're all in the Christmas spirit, Our Tree Is Up. I'm looking at it right now. We bought a tree over the weekend, and we decorated it. And we watched a Christmas movie to celebrate, and we chose the new Netflix movie, The Christmas Chronicle, starring Mr. Kurt Russell, who may make an appearance on this podcast today. Have you seen this yet?
You know what? It's funny. I actually have seen it.
Okay.
I'm not in full-on Christmas mode yet, but I did watch that with the family.
Mm-hmm. And as a family movie, okay, what's your opinion? do you want me to go first on this one?
All right, sure. Full disclosure, Kurt Russell is probably my favorite actor of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it has anything to do with acting ability or just screen presence, but I just love the guy. I always have.
Right.
And seeing him play Santa, I thought was pretty awesome. I thought he was great. He was charming. He had a really good presence to him. I wish somehow this could have been like an 80s movie or even a 90s movie, because I don't know, it's just so much harder to like capture that magic nowadays. If you take him out of it, which isn't really fair, because you could say that about a lot of Kurt Russell movies, I'm sure.
Right.
But you take him out of it, and it's sort of nothing. It's like a Hallmark movie or something.
Totally.
So I don't know. I mean, my kid was really into it. She's 3, so she was really into it. So I always enjoy that, and I liked watching Kurt Russell. But it had stuff like the elves, for example. I've never seen those Despicable Me movies or whatever, but I feel like they're supposed to be like those Minion characters, kind of.
Right.
And that kind of stuff, like I get it, like it's not for me, like it's for the kids, but it's just that doesn't do anything for me. I don't know. I had a lot of stuff like that where the humor just wasn't for me, and that's okay. But it's Kurt Russell. I'd love to see him in like every other movie. So.
Oh yeah, I would say this movie is the Kurt Russell show. It's like without like you said, without this movie, it is pretty much nothing. Without his performance, it is just like a story about these two kids who just like a brother and sister are just constantly mean to each other, and then or the brother's really mean to the sister, and then they need to believe in Christmas again. Like, okay, great.
That's exactly the plot. Like, yeah,
that's really it. And I guess the idea that Chris Columbus had produced this movie, so there's lots of like homages to like Chris Columbus projects.
Yeah,
So
for some reason I thought he directed it at 1st,
Mhm.
and I think that kind of had me more excited about it.
Right.
But I realized he didn't direct it, because first I was like, oh, cool, they're popping up in Chicago and all this other stuff, and that felt very Chris Columbus. But then I realized he probably wasn't as involved as that, and it's a little bit of a letdown. Probably would have been a lot better.
It's like the Home Alone 3 of the Chris Columbus movie. It feels like more like that. It's like an expensive movie, I'm sure.
Sure.
There's a lot of special effects, etc. So it's not like a cheap version of like Home Alone, but it is in a way, because
Did you? Sorry, I was just gonna ask. Did you enjoy the cameo at the very end?
the cameo. I kind of knew it was coming. Someone said there was a cameo at the end. I'm like, oh, is it this part? Is that person? Like, I guess.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah,
But
I didn't know, so I was kind of happy to see that person. In a
I
movie
was
with Kurt Russell.
I was too, and I'm like, if this is where the sequel, if there's a sequel going, I'm totally on board with that. Like,
Oh yeah,
just
please.
being about those two characters would be like a plenty enough of a new movie. You don't need like kids. You don't need like drama about getting over your dad dying, and like the forced drama of this movie just was so like eye rolling.
Yeah, for sure.
It just wasn't fully realized. Yeah, like you said, there were these callbacks to like other Chris Columbus movies. I noticed Home Alone, where the kid set traps. There was like even Gremlins. Those elves are basically like gremlins, though they're kind of more cartoony, like minions. And then there's...
I wish they were more like Gremlins. That would have been a completely different movie.
Right, exactly. And the family drama of like Mrs. Doubtfire is in there. San Francisco makes an appearance. There's lots of there's lots of Harry Potter-ish kind of like vibe in it as well. So there's lots of, it's like a greatest hits of Chris Columbus, but definitely not anywhere near great. And Adventures in Babysitting Force is the other one, because it is like a one night on the town kind of movie. Literally, like they're just like having this one night and trying to get back home in time for whatever. And I like that. I like those callbacks because I like all those movies, but it just wasn't as well done. But Kurt Russell gets to play Elvis again,
Yes.
and he gets to be silly. He gets to play Jack Burton in a way. He's that kind of tone. He's that kind of toned Kurt Russell. Not like he's not Snake Plissken. He's not like. He's not McReady. He's not McReady. Yeah, exactly. So he's more Jack Burton-esque, silly Santa and sarcastic Santa, and we like that. So
yeah, it's funny because I even my mom watched our kid the other day for us, and I told her she should put that movie on for her because she really liked it, and she texted me like a couple hours later and was just like, Kurt Russell makes a really handsome Santa. I was like, yeah, he does.
Your mom is smart. I like it.
I was like, I'm glad she took something out of that.
She's got good taste.
Yeah. But yeah, it's exactly. I'm on the same boat as you. I mean, I wish it was, a movie I loved. You know how Netflix prompts you to like rate a movie after you watch it?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't bring myself to rate it because I didn't want to give Kurt Russell's Santa performance anything less than a 5, but I couldn't give the movie a 5, so I just left it. I was like, I can't. I'm at a dilemma here.
Yeah, we need to look a little like movie 2.5 stars. Kurt Russell 5 stars.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be perfect.
All right, let's get right into a TV spot for your number 5.
He moves fast. He fights hard. He makes a lasting impression. Van Damme.
Whatever's going on, the guards are involved.
He loves the action.
The number's next on the list.
Wham, bam. Thank you, Van Damme.
Welcome to hell!
Death Warrant.
Starts Friday at a theater near you. Check your local listings.
Let's talk about Death Warrant. Death Warrant is a childhood favorite of mine. I probably saw it when I was way too young and just kind of grew up with it. It's a Jean-Claude Van Damme vehicle, and you can't go wrong with Jean-Claude Van Damme in prison. It's got a great supporting cast. Cynthia Gibb is there from most people probably know her from Modern Girls, I'm assuming, but she's been in a lot of great movies.
Short Circuit too.
Oh, Short Circuit too. There
Gotta
you go.
love
There's also a small role by Joshua John Miller, who I know from Near Dark, but he's in a lot of other 80s movies as well. And he has like a fun, kind of flirty relationship with Cynthia Gibb as the kind of hopeless, nerdy kid with a crush on an older woman. That's a lot of fun. I thought it was great. I mean, it was really fun to revisit the movie. I hadn't seen it for years. I remember the Sandman serial killer character being really scary when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, I laughed a little bit at some of his moments this time around. I don't want to spoil anything in the movie. I mean, it's not like silly. I don't want to sell it the wrong way. It's just the right balance of silly and action and thrills and everything. But and it's pretty gory too, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
There were some gory deaths that I wasn't expecting, but and not to spoil anything, but there's obviously a showdown at the end between Van Damme's character and the Sandman, and there's a great scene where Sandman opens up this furnace to taunt Van Damme, and I think he yells something like "Welcome to Hell," and all the prisoners are watching, and as soon as he does it, Van Damme just kicks him into the flames. So, like, I was laughing so hard. I mean, you can't write this. If this was like a comedy, they couldn't have written it any better. I was just laughing so hard, and then he comes out of the flames. It's kind of supposed to be like a jump scare, I guess, that he's still alive. And Van Damme just kind of like politely waits for him to put the flames out. Like, he rolls around and on the floor, and Van Damme just kind of waits for him to get back up and just like basically like kills him right away. And I don't know. It's just such a great movie. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of nostalgia for me, but I had to find a way to include it on my list. It's it's not going to win any awards, but that's not what these movies are about, obviously. And, I'll also mention that I appreciated that they made Van Damme's character French Canadian. They like wrote that into the script. I don't know, little stuff like that. Like, I appreciate, instead of naming his character Max Walker or something like in Time Cop, and just having him supposed to be some all-American guy. It's always kind of funny with him and with Arnie when they play those roles. So I appreciate it if they kind of just put it in the script that, oh, this guy's Canadian or something. I don't know. I got a kick out of that. And I'm curious to see what you thought of this movie, actually.
Okay. Death Warrant is a canon film. So, what does that mean? It's amazing. It is totally amazing. I had such a blast revisiting this movie. I saw it long time ago. I think when it came out I didn't see it in the theater. I saw this on VHS, and so it was a new release on the shelf, and I remember enjoying it, but kind of forgetting about it, because I guess I sort of got all those Van Damme movies mixed up a little bit in the 90s. But
sure.
Rewatching it, man, oh man, this was a blast. My wife and I watched it, and she especially likes it. Awesome. she's like, she wants to rewatch it soon. She just thought it was. I mean, it is hysterical. It gets over the top and crazy, as a canon movie does and should do.
It does it in the right way.
As it should do. It just really is. It does fulfill the brief with every kind of canon kind of thing you'd want. Every kind of cliche, every kind of prison cliche. Prison movies have their own built-in cliches, and that's just the way it is. It has to be like the younger person who like you kind of take under your wing, who eventually will get killed, or like the wise old black prisoner who's been there a long time who has to like help you, or it's full of them. The sadistic like warden. There's so many cliches that these movies have, and yes, Death Warrant definitely does dive into that. There is corruption in this prison, and Van Damme's the only one who can solve this problem. He's a one-man kicking machine. He has so many problems to deal with, like corruption, as well as other prisoners, and then of course his nemesis, the Sandman, who he thought he killed, gets to join the prison, and it's like piled on in this movie. It's like piled really high, like all these obstacles that Van Damme has to overcome to save the day, and man, does he do that, and he does it in such a fun way.
Absolutely. I feel like we haven't even really gotten into the plot, and that just goes to show like you don't even need to get into the plot for this movie. It's so much fun. I love that you just mentioned Van Damme as a kicking machine, because I think I noticed that he didn't use his hands at all in the fighting scenes, and I really enjoyed that. Him and Steven Seagal, I really kind of have fun watching their action scenes because they're so choreographed for their skill set. Mm-hmm. Like if you watch a Steven Seagal movie next time, just notice everybody runs towards him, like they like charge him, so he could like kind of just use his moves to like disarm them and throw them to the side or break their neck or whatever.
Right, he's always like breaking your like wrist, or he's like doing the fast like hits. Yeah,
but you have to rush him. Like he just stands there and looks cool, and you rush him. And Van Damme is just kicking everybody left and right. And I don't remember him doing the splits, which is funny.
No splits. I was so.
Yeah, that must have been written into his contract later that they got to include that in all his movies. But I don't believe there were any splits in this one. But it's still one of his best, and I really love that era. Of Van Damme movies. I just think they're a lot of fun, and canon movies, I mean, in general. So I'm glad I got to revisit it and include it in my list. I thought it was a lot of fun.
And I was really hoping for the split, like maybe like he'll like do a split to like get the bad guy at the end somehow, just like something, like prison splits.
It seems like a natural fit.
Pretty sexy. David Goyer wrote this movie, like the guy who did all the Batman whatevers and Dark City.
Yeah, he's made a name for himself for sure since then.
There's some very questionable like dialogue. There's some questionable characterizations. There's some really silly choices. Definitely Van Damme's acting is very questionable in this movie. Just the way he talks and delivers his lines. He got much better in the 90s. But like if you watch his performance here, I'm like, it's a little bit like what? but that's what adds to, but I'm not knocking the movie anyway, because that adds to the charm of the movie.
Absolutely. Just it's all part of the package, and it's great.
Absolutely. It's just gosh, this movie was so much fun to revisit. I really had a blast.
I'm glad you loved it, and I think your wife might be a keeper if she loved it too. That's a great sign, because I'm pretty sure mine went to sleep about 20 minutes after I put it on.
My wife's really into action movies these days, so she's she was happy watching. At first she was like, what's your topic? Prison movies? No, thank you. And then I put on Death Warrant, and then like ever since then, like, okay, what's the next prison movie we're watching?
Yeah, like I can imagine people listening being like, okay, where's like Papillon and like Shawshank Redemption, and here we are just talking about Death Warrant.
We have maybe two legitimate prison movies, guys. So they're coming up later, but we'll get to them. But yeah, we're gonna have these too.
Oh, that reminds me, Meep. We do have some honorable mentions, I think, too.
Oh yeah, let's talk. Let's hear them.
Gosh, you know what? Why don't you tell me yours? Because I watched so many movies that we talked about. I'll just mention the ones that you don't mention.
Okay,
How about
I have a huge list. So.
Oh, great.
First off, I have the question mark for Jericho Mile because I have never seen it. It's a prison movie that was directed by a TV movie. It was directed by Michael Mann. So I need to see that.
Wow, yeah.
Bad Boys with Sean Penn. I like that a lot as a kid. Black Mama, White Mama. Born Innocent with Linda Blair. I like the Birdcage, Big Dollhouse movies with Pam Grier. Brubaker, Cage Fear, Cage Fury, Cage Cheat. So many cages. We all live in cages. There might be a Cage movie later. Concrete Jungle, which I rewatched for the podcast, and I liked it, and it's a good film. Maybe not as fun as some of the other ones here, but it's good. Defiant Ones. I don't know why it's on my list. Too classy. So get off my list. Escape from Alcatraz. Also very classy prison movie, but I remember really liking that. Growing up, I went to Alcatraz, and just it was good. Hellhole. I revisited for the podcast. Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. Innocent Man with what's his name, Tom Selleck. Saw that growing up.
Yeah.
Jackson County Jail, The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, too classy for this podcast. Longest Yard, the original with Burt Reynolds. My wife is actually a fan of the remake too. I didn't know that until
how funny
until later.
I don't think I've ever seen the remake.
Murder in the First. I saw that in the theater when I was working in the theater, so I got to see that a couple times. Nightmare in Badham County was a TV movie. Grew up with that. Purgatory. Red Heat has some good prison stuff in it. Running Man.
Sure.
I guess you can consider the Running Man a prison movie in a way.
Oh my god, I wanted to include that on my list, and I thought it would be too much of a stretch, but I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great movie.
It's a great movie, yeah. Savage Island, Scrubbers, Scum, Short Eyes, Tango and Cash has some good prison stuff in it.
Yeah, it does. Good one for sure.
And Kurt Russell, of course. Terminal Island, Toy Soldiers from 1985 has some prison stuff in it. Undisputed, I wanted to revisit for the podcast because I like Walter Hill movies a lot, and I remember enjoying that in the theater. So I might have to rewatch that soon. I remember liking it. Wesley Snipes movie.
Yeah, that's gosh, I love Walter Hill, and I don't remember if the last time I saw that movie. That's a good one. Good one to mention.
Two more: Wedlock and Women in Cages.
Oh my gosh, is Wedlock the one where your head explodes or something?
Yes, with Rutger Hauer.
I've got to see that again. Wow, you just brought up another one that I haven't seen or thought of for a long time. That would have been fun to revisit.
For sure.
You mentioned some great ones there. I love The Running Man. I wanted to include it, but I thought that might be pushing it. I love that you mentioned Tango and Cash. I love that movie. I hadn't thought of that. And there was a lot of other titles you mentioned. Let me see if there's any that I'd seen recently. Did you mention Caged Fury?
Caged Fury, yes.
Okay, that movie was crazy. I don't even know what to say. It was a lot of fun. But I think I was like kind of sleepy while I was watching it too, and it was like this like a crazy fever dream that I'm not even sure if it's real or not. But yeah, that was great. Eric Estrada and Ron Jeremy and James Hong and all these random people. Paul L. Smith,
right?
Who might make an appearance, right?
Exactly.
on our list. God, there was that crazy martial arts character, Dirk, I want to say his name was in the movie, Richie Brathy, who was like kicking through walls and just, I don't even know where that character came from. He like just, it was just amazing. But and it had some twists, and I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but it kind of ends near a famous Hollywood landmark that has a finale where it kind of pops up there, and I was just, I'm telling you, I don't know if I hallucinated that whole movie or not, because it feels like it. But that's definitely worth mentioning.
Ron Jeremy as Pizza Face.
Yeah, is that his name? That's great. I didn't even know that was his character's name. I actually saw him standing outside of a strip club in Hollywood once when I was driving home from work in that area, and he was wearing a tuxedo, and I think he was doing a commercial or something. I guess that's life in LA, right? I just
Totally.
was driving up the street and I look over and there's Ron Jeremy like standing in front of a strip club doing a commercial or something. I don't know. But yeah, that was great. I'm glad you mentioned that. I did watch Hellhole. I think you mentioned Hellhole. I do like Mary Warrenov and Robert. How do you say it? Robert Zadar? I always forget.
That's
how to
right.
say it.
Yeah, Robert Czar,
Maniac.
or just Czar. Yeah.
Sure, he's awesome, and I thought that was fun. I'm glad you mentioned that because I feel like the sanitarium movies are kind of like their own subgenre, even. And this is one that I kind of just watched by accident, thinking it was more like prison than the sanitarium. But it was fun, and I'm glad we watched that too. And I like that there was like different factions of villains, kind of like with their own agendas. I thought that was fun. I'm trying to think of what else you mentioned here before I get to mine. You did mention Purgatory? I was able to find that on YouTube.
Right.
It had some really it could have really been a downer because of a lot of the stuff that was happening.
Totally. Yeah.
There's not to get into spoilers or anything, but there's like this person who gets like gang raped and then they kill themselves, and like there's like a U.S. diplomat who's trying to uncover like a conspiracy, and he gets like burned alive. It sounds like so like terrible to say all these things. Like it's really grueling. They're like a mom and like an honest politician just get like ran off a cliff like to their death, and I thought I thought that was a fake out. Even I was like, oh, they're gonna have survived that or something. But like, oh my god, it's like so many terrible things happening. But like somehow it like was fun. It wasn't. It wasn't like a downer of a movie. I don't know how to say it. It was
certainly one of the best South African prison movies.
Yeah, right. It's top 5 South African prison movies for sure. And Tanya Roberts is always great. So I that was a new one to me. I'm glad you brought that up too. Actually, some of these were new. Other ones as well. And I did watch. I believe you mentioned Vendetta as an honorable mention.
That's actually in my top 5. So we're gonna...
Oh, okay, great. Then I'll save my thoughts on that. Sorry, I jumped the gun. I will say for my own honorable mentions, I'll keep it short. One of them will be Destroyer from 1988, and I had the Scream Factory Blue for that. I hadn't seen it for a really long time. Actually, watching it again, I'm not sure if I'd ever seen it. I thought I had. But it was a little different than what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be a little bit more supernatural, like Shocker or The Last Horror Show. But it was just this kind of wacky slasher movie set in a prison that I really loved. And you got Clayton Rohner and Deborah Foreman from April Fool's Day, so that's kind of fun. And you got Anthony Perkins, and there's a great role for a former football standout, Lyle Alzado, and it's just I thought it was a lot of fun. I really wish that the movie inside the movie was real.
Yes,
I think it's called Dead Mouse Dolls. I just thought that was a lot of fun. I think I'm kind of a sucker for like the movies within movies.
Totally. Me too.
So I thought that looked like it was a lot of fun, and I liked like kind of the diva, starlet of that movie, the washed up diva, and that was definitely an honorable mention for me. I wish I could have found room for it on my list, but I guess I didn't have the same nostalgia for it because it felt like a newer one to me. Watching it again, or watching it for the first time again, I'm not sure. But it was really fun. I definitely would recommend it. And and you know what I will say, since we already mentioned Vendetta, not to get into that yet, but this movie also has a heroine who's a stunt woman, and I remember thinking while I was watching it that there needs to be like a whole genre of movies where the hero is like a stunt woman, because I just think that's a lot of fun, and they have a lot of fun with it.
I haven't seen Destroyed in a long. I have the Scream Factory Blu-ray. I had the VHS pretty early on, and I remember watching it and enjoying it. So I need to really revisit it because I remember liking it.
I think you would like it for sure.
I mean, I definitely got it for the actors because because I like Clayton Rohner a lot. I like Deborah Foreman, and so I remember just enjoying it on that level. So maybe I need to go back and really dig some of more of the prison stuff and movie within the movie stuff. I remember that was definitely Anthony Perkins' period in the late '80s where he was. I know he had a drug problem, so that might have manifested in his performance a little bit. But I don't know. I just found him pretty interesting and pretty crazy sometimes. When he
I mean, he's such an icon, and you think of him, you associate him with like a lot classier movies, I guess. But it's him, and I guess I'll mention another actor who might come up later, George Kennedy, kind of had this run in the 80s, and I guess maybe even into the 90s, where they pop up in some really kind of crazy genre stuff. And I don't know what it is. I really get a kick out of that. Like, I really love seeing these like good actors and with some all-time great performances in their filmography, kind of showing up and doing a slasher movie or whatever. I think that's a lot of fun.
I wish they still made movies like this, so like really respectable actors like Meryl Streep or someone can like show up in them. I mean, like how great would that be? Like that's what these actors should be doing to shaking up their image. They should, instead of being an Oscar bait, they should just do like a little slasher movie. Why not?
We can only dream.
We can dream, exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention one more movie really quick as far as the honorable mention. So, I mean, Destroyer is a big one for me, obviously. But I did want to bring up an older one, and you kind of touched on this in your intro about some of the older kind of noir movies, or noir. Riot in Cell Block 11 from 1954 is a movie that I really like. It's just, I won't say a whole lot about it. It's kind of by the numbers, but it's just a bunch of tough guys, and that era is just, it has a real charm to it, and I'd really recommend that to anyone who might be interested in like I don't want to say it's like a melodrama. It's definitely not, but it's more of a drama than anything else. But it's done in a really entertaining way, and it kind of has some messages in there if you look for them. I just wanted to mention it in there because it is a prison movie, and I think it's a little bit more of a traditional prison movie than some of the other ones that we're talking about. Just wanted to throw that out there. Anyone who might be interested in that era, if you don't mind black and white movies, which you shouldn't if you're listening to Retro Movie Love.
We love black and white movies. They're especially because they were so beautifully shot, a lot of them too. And if you look at them, and I think like on Blu-ray too, they look especially good. Something about going back to those the natural look of that those movies. I just love it.
Absolutely, and that's all for me as far as honorable mentions. I think we got plenty of other movies to talk about.
All right, let me get into my number 5, and here it is.
If there is a hell on Earth, it's inside these walls.
God, everything keeps getting worse and worse, and I haven't even done anything!
Where the only dreams are nightmares.
You just lost your protection.
Taking a one-way trip through a living hell.
Because of your lies, I gotta spend 3 years in this stinking hellhole.
But even good girls grow up fast in the naked cage.
I want 5 minutes alone with Michelle. You'll get your 5 minutes.
There's nowhere to run, no place to hide. Once the iron bars trap you inside.
After everything you've done to me, you don't think I have the guts to kill you?
The naked cage.
Okay, that's the trailer for The Naked Cage. I went with a canon movie as well, since you went with a canon movie for your number 5. Because God bless canon films. I mean, really, what would this world be without them?
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
If we didn't have them, I mean, I enjoyed that canon documentary from a couple of years ago, but I felt like it could have been even better had it covered like more in depth of like movies like this and Death.
Yeah.
I feel like it just kind of skipped over a lot of the movies that made canon so much fun and so out there, so outlandish. So I wanted to highlight Naked Cage here because it is a women in prison movie from canon. So that means you're going to get a heightened sense of reality. You're going to get all the cliches thrown in there. You're going to get these actresses who are, I would say, larger than life performances.
That's fair.
The villain is I think her name is Christina Whitaker as evil Rita. She is great. I mean, she has such a presence, and she really kind of steals her scenes when she shows up in the movie. I feel like the final girl, the prison girl. There's always like the kind of more innocent-y kind of one you follow in these movies, and she's kind of a bit dull, I guess, compared to everybody else. But this movie is alive and lots of good supporting characters, so it's not as bad. It's easier to take. You have the evil lesbian warden, Angel Tompkins. You have Fate Minton, who always pops up. She's kind of like this very muscular woman who kind of pops up like as either bodybuilders or just like a tough broad. Her name, I think in this one, was Sheila. She was in stuff like Sudden Death with Van Damme. She was in Switch, Stay Tuned, Ski Patrol. Who's that girl? I liked her as Sheila in this one. She at first you kind of think she's very villainous, like Rita, but then she has a softer side too.
She does, but she also kills someone for no reason, basically.
True.
It's interesting how they threw that in there because she's kind of been a hero up until that point.
There was a mix of like it's kind of thrown together in some of that. There's like a feeling of like, okay, like, yeah, what? Which I like. Which is what I like about about canon films and how they just kind of sometimes it'd be like WTF, like basically like Ninja 3 is like the whole movie is like WTF, what the fuck? And I feel like that happens in like occasionally in movies where it's like you think it's going to be a standard genre movie like a Death Warrant or a Naked Cage, but then it kind of gets kind of crazy. It has a vibrancy, this movie, a color. It's very colorful. The Blu-ray really picks up on that.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just think it looks great, and I just had a lot of fun. I mean, it was directed by Paul Nicholas. He made the sleaze-tastic Julie Darling.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
And he made another movie, which I'm going to put the trailer here because I have to mention it, even though I didn't get it. I tried rewatching it. I had problems trying to track this movie down. But here's the trailer for it.
There's been far too many deaths in this prison.
Well, maybe you could tell me how to accommodate 2,000 inmates in a prison that was built for 1,500.
In this prison, rules and new inmates are meant to be broken.
Prison virgin? Well, after the shock rubs off, you'll get pictured. In here, it's not a matter of what you know. It's who you know.
The crimes these women committed that got them into this prison are nothing compared to the crimes they'll commit to get out.
Everybody clear this corridor, I call security.
The game that Taylor sets up for all the inmates.
Please, Miss Miller, don't put me in here. I'll take care of it.
She likes to pit blacks against whites. Don't get caught up in the game. Don't you walk away from me, you chalk-faced whore.
Where do you want it?
Yeah!
Caged women. Chained Heat.
Chained Heat is I would say is an infamous women in prison movie. I feel like a lot of people, when they think of 80s women in prison movies, will go to this one. Will think about this one because Linda Blair, of course, is in our first it's her second women in prison role because she was in Born Innocent in the 70s.
Sure.
But this is like her adult women in prison, her first of many adult women in prison roles, and you get to follow her as she's in this prison with Sybil Danning and who else is that? Tamara Dobson as Duchess, who gets like the best line of all time when she says like, "Don't walk away from me, you chalk face whore," which like I saw that as a kid and was like, that's stuck with me, so I just can't forget it.
I like to think like you used that on the playground at some point.
Yeah, hopefully my kids will. No, I mean it's very offensive, obviously, but it's an offensive movie in lots of ways. It's sleaze-tastic. It's over the top.
Yeah.
And ridiculous. John Vernon as the sleazy warden. Oh my god, amazing. The hot tub scene's crazy. You almost see him naked. It's like, what is going on in this crazy movie? Henry Silva, another villain. Like, you have to throw a bunch of villains in this movie. Stella Stevens is a villain. I mean,
wow.
She's like, it's like piled high with poor Linda Blair has to like expose this corruption in this prison. Another one of these cliches in this movie is where someone has to kind of like, by the end of the movie, kind of expose everything, and at the risk of like getting killed or being shanked or just like all your friends dying because of it. It's like,
oh my gosh, yes.
There will be some expendables by the end of this movie. There will be people who will die for whatever cause. So there's that fun, and it's good. It's a good film. It's a little bit more, I would say, by the numbers than say some of the other ones, even though it has a lot of these crazy elements in it. So I enjoy it. I think I enjoyed it even more as a kid because I got to see all this nudity and just following like Linda Blair's character. I think that was kind of fun because I was a big fan of hers growing up and in the setting.
Oh, sure, yeah. I was just gonna say, actually, full disclosure, I'm ashamed to admit this, but I've never seen Chained Heat, and I don't believe I have, at least. And the title, I mean, some of these titles are so easy to mix up with a lot of these women in prison movies that I was thinking of different things when you mentioned it, but when I looked it up and saw Linda Blair and Sybil Danning, I mean, this I'm sure this is considered an absolute classic, and I had a hard time tracking it down too. Unfortunately, I think I found it on YouTube where you could hear the English audio, but it was dubbed over in some random language, and I wasn't gonna watch it like that.
No, there's like no good version of this movie.
No, exactly. But if I could say actually really quick about your number 5 pick, the Naked Cage, that might be my favorite women in prison movie, to be honest. It was amazing. I mean, it just hit all the right notes. It was like the right balance of it's very colorful, like you said, and the characters are great, and it's just the right balance of sleazy and fun, and there's like action, and it's, I don't know, I don't even know how to describe it, but I just had a huge grin on my face the whole time, and really had fun with that. It might, gosh, I mean, I think it is probably my favorite women in prison movie, at least at the moment. There's a whole bunch I got to watch again or see for the first time.
And there's more to come on this list. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. But I'd highly recommend that one. It's a lot of fun. I think it kind of, I feel like women in prison movies might be like a niche that's not for everyone. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that movie, just because it has that canon appeal, like I think that it can appeal to everybody who just wants to have a good time and watch this crazy movie. And I don't know. I don't know what to say about it other than I really loved it. Like I'm glad you included it.
If you can't enjoy a good evil lesbian warden character, then I don't know what kind of fun you really are looking for from movies.
Oh my! It's so funny you mentioned that, actually, because So, I mean, we might see a lot of, spoiler alert, we might see a lot of villainous wardens on our list.
All of them,
you
pretty much.
You did touch on that as far as the tropes, but I think I want to say, going back to Death Warrant, I think that might be the only movie where you don't even see a warden. I think you just have the evil, like, kind of captain of the guard, and there's like a doctor and some stuff going on there. But I remember I was waiting the whole movie, like, all right, where's the evil warden? Because that is definitely something we're going to see a lot more of on the rest of the list.
All right. I mean, I pair these together because it's the same director, but watching both, I do agree that Nicolas Cage is the more fun and vibrant one. It feels like that's the one that might be easier to rewatch. Of the two. I think Chain Heat would definitely benefit from a deluxe Blu-ray edition. I know there's a lot of fans out there who are waiting for it, and rightfully. But I do feel like Naked Cage gets a little bit not so much left in the prison alone when compared, but I think it does need its time. It does. You should check out that Blu-ray if you have any interest in canon movies, and if you have interest in women in prison movies. I think it's definitely you gotta have a blast with it.
Absolutely.
Check out the trailer online because the trailer is also fun. All right, here is your number 4.
In the year 2017, one corporation is building a fortress for the ultimate takeover. Your mind. They will control your thoughts. They will invade your dreams.
This is an unauthorized thought process.
Now, one man will fight the system. The critics are calling it more powerful than Total Recall. Christopher Lambert, Fortress, rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you.
All right, so for my number 4 pick, I did cheat a bit and made a double feature.
Oh, you pulled a meat and did you did that. I do that all the time.
I had to, even though it's my first time ever on a podcast. I figured I could cheat a little bit. My first movie I'm going to talk about is actually Fortress from 1992. I feel like it's a little bit of a forgotten movie. It's by Stuart Gordon, who everybody will know from Reanimator. And hopefully you'll also know him from Beyond and Castle Freak and other things he's been involved with. Dolls. I really love Stuart Gordon. I feel like he's really underrated. Gosh, I mean, I don't know how we would quantify someone being underrated, but if we were ever to do a list, I have a feeling he might be right there at the top. This movie is a lot of fun. It's set in the future, the distant future of 2017, which I love, and has a great supporting cast. You've got Jeffrey Combs in there. You've got actor Lincoln Kilpatrick in there, who is also in the second movie of this double feature, and which is the reason I paired them together and was able to cheat a little bit. Lincoln Kilpatrick's a great actor. You'll know him as soon as you see him. And I just thought the movie was so much fun. It stars Christopher Lambert, which I should mention. And there's just a lot of great performances in it. It's just a solid movie. It has a real. You mentioned The Running Man earlier. Mm-hmm. It has kind of a Running Man vibe to it, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. I can see that totally. Yeah, it has that futuristic, but like kind of not in such a high tech, large budget way, but kind of a way that's fun and it's silly.
Well, exactly, and it's interesting. Oh, and we should also mention Kurtwood Smith, who we know from RoboCop and other movies as well. I guess a lot of people know him from being the dad in I forgot what it was called, that 70s show. Sorry.
Mm-hmm, right.
But he's a great actor, and he's in this as well as I guess he's like the warden like character, with some twists in this futuristic setting, and it's just a great movie. I really love it, and I read. I'm not sure. I didn't dig up on this too much, but from what I understand, Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally set to star in this movie. And it was
Amazing.
going to have a much bigger budget. And unfortunately, after he dropped out, they cut the budget by like, 60 million or something like that. But I think that Stuart Gordon really made a special movie, and I'm glad it exists. I'm glad this version exists. I wished we could somehow have like an alternate reality where we could see the big budget Arnold Schwarzenegger version as well. But I'm glad that we have Fortress. I feel like it's forgotten as a Stuart Gordon movie, and I think it's great, and it's ripe to be rediscovered. This is a movie where I had to pick up a cool release from overseas, where they gave it some nice packaging and artwork and everything over in Germany. I'd love to see it get that kind of a release here one day. But for now, I'm just happy to bring it up, and I'm curious what you thought of it.
First off, I'm going to say that I love that you're really into artwork for movies, that you get all these releases from different countries because you're drawn to the artwork. I love that. I feel like artwork is kind of a lost art in terms of media here in this country. I feel like
absolutely
there's a lot of commissioned art that's very lackluster. I won't say what companies, but they know who they are. I feel like there's definitely a trend now of doing retro art, which is showing you like that the power of the original artwork in some of these movies.
Absolutely.
It just kind of really there's a lot of nostalgia for it, and I like that there's this new trend for that. I don't appreciate some of the newer things because they seem a little too comic booky for me. I just don't really capture the essence of the movies like the artworks that were originally commissioned for the movies or these foreign artworks which I've seen and how beautiful they are and how illustrated they are. Really pop to me and catch my eye, and I like that you're interested in them.
Sorry, just really quick about the artwork. I would say, if you remember the old days, which I'm sure you do, I mean, the artwork of a VHS at the video store, I mean, that was the draw. That's what got us in, and I feel like that's stuck with me. Where even a movie I might have not been crazy about, if it gets a release from Scream Factory or Arrow or something, and has some cool artwork that I hadn't seen, or something new that's commissioned but is just really grabs my attention. I mean, it has that same effect, from walking down the aisle at the video store, and it's gonna draw me to watch that movie again.
Cool.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. It's that can definitely be a plus. But yeah, what were your thoughts on Fortress? And
on Fortress, I saw this movie. I was trying to think if I saw it theatrically. I didn't see it theatrically, so I must have watched it first on home video when it came out in I guess '93 on home video, and I remember liking it. I kind of lumped some of those Christopher Lambert movies together. I like saying Christopher Lambert, by the way.
As you should.
But revisiting it over the years, I have the Blu-ray from Lionsgate. It's kind of not, it's an okay, very standard Blu-ray. It's like just like the movie. There aren't any features at all. It looked okay. It could look better. And I revisited it, and it just looks. I mean, it's such a fun movie. It really is a fun movie. Stuart Gordon always makes a good, entertaining film. No matter how low the budget, I feel like he tries to make the most out of it, and he definitely does that with this one. And I just had a good time with it. I feel like it does need more appreciation, does need more love. So a deluxe Blu-ray for it. Whoever owns the Dimension Miramax catalog these days, I don't know if it's Lionsgate, whoever, definitely needs to give it more love, as well as their other Dimension titles. They're obviously lacking in that department. So I think this is one of the ones that definitely should be revisited and re-released and enjoyed by people, because it is really solid. It's a lot of fun. You got Christopher Lambert. You have Jeffrey Combs with his Coke bottle glasses.
I love his glasses in this movie. I actually got the opportunity to meet Jeffrey Combs at Monsterpalooza once out here in LA, and I actually mentioned his glasses to him, and he got a big kick out of it. He seems to remember every movie he's ever been in, that guy, but that's a whole other story. He's a lot of fun.
I love that. I love that he's he's not one of these actors who seems to like want to take an about face from their career, or just he kind of owns up to it and enjoys the fans, which is great. He's fun, and everything else in this movie. Kurtwood Smith is great as this really sleazy kind of warden.
He is.
There's a twist into the movie which is pretty fun as well. It has a sci-fi bent to this movie. So I know that's turned some people off. Someone I was actually talking to earlier about it said they didn't watch it because they thought it was just some bad sci-fi movie. And I guess if you want to look at it that, you can look at it that way. You can, but I think it's because Stuart Gordon cares a lot about characterization. He comes from a stage background. He does care about other elements other than just like some of the pyrotechnics. It adds a lot more to it than that, and where a script might have been pretty bland before, I think he allows the actors to give it more of an emotional depth to it and a sense of fun. So I think Kurtwood Smith definitely picks up on that. He looks like he's having a ball playing that role, as do a lot of other people in the movie. And just Christopher Lambert as an actor, I've always enjoyed something about him that skirts a line of being very bad and very good, and I like that about him. He has like this questionable kind of accent in a lot of movies, but that I love, and like the stringy hair, and he looks like sometimes like Thomas Jane. And it's like there's like a lot going on with Christopher Lambert that I like, and he's a good leading man in these movies, like in the Highlander movies, of course. I know a lot of people will love him for that, and I love the first Highlander movie. I feel like Highlander 3 came out around the same time as Fortress. It was kind of like back-to-back movies for Christopher Lambert. I know. I had fun with this one. I really did. I'm
glad to hear that.
It's really a fun movie. What was your second one on your double feature?
Oh, okay. So the second one of my Lincoln Kilpatrick double feature is a movie called Prison from 1987. And this is a Rennie Harlin movie, who everybody knows, of course. I'd say I'm a big Rennie Harlin fan. Maybe not as... I know everybody loves Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. Mm-hmm. I never really forgave that movie for recasting Patricia Arquette, who I had a big crush on back in the day. And, I think it's good. It's probably my fourth favorite movie in the franchise. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think his other stuff, a lot of his other stuff just really jumps out to me, like Cliffhanger, Deep Blue Sea, and this movie I think is great. And this movie stars Viggo Mortensen, who everybody knows, of course. He's very young. It's an early role. It's got a great supporting cast. You've got Lincoln Kilpatrick basically playing the same character he was in Fortress, which I think is a lot of fun.
Yeah, the wise old African American character who kind of is expendable by the end of the movie.
He's seen some things, and exactly. And you've got him in there. You've got Tiny Lister in there. He's pretty young in there too. You got Lane Smith as the villain in a way. He's the warden in this film, and I knew Lane Smith as Perry White growing up he played Perry White in Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, and he's like such a lovable character. He's into Elvis. He puts his own twist on this old comic book character, and I always, I love seeing him in that series growing up, and seeing him as just such a bastard in this movie. it was. I don't know. I had to kind of do a double take, but he does such a good job with it.
He's also famous for playing one of the most infamous villains of all time, and that is Richard Nixon. He played him,
right? Yeah, I was trying to think. What am I forgetting? Yeah, of course. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think the effects are great. I think there's a lot of really cool creative kills. I don't know. I really recommend it. It kind of, we mentioned Destroyer earlier, and I feel like there's like a whole subgenre of these prisoners who are executed by the electric chair, and then that's just the beginning of their reign of terror kind of stories. And this is definitely, gosh, I mean, this might be my favorite of them. And I just really recommend it. Oh, and I think I read that Kane Hodder of Friday the 13th fame is the stunt coordinator on this movie, which I thought was a lot of fun too. So what are your thoughts on Prison?
I didn't get to revisit this one for the podcast, but I have it on Blu-ray. I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember enjoying this one. I'm a big Rennie Harlan fan in general. I actually recently rewatched The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Oh,
and
sure.
I'm a huge fan of that. It's actually my wife's favorite Christmas movie of all time. And he's such a good director of action, and he really knows how to build a set piece. That's why I think you should rewatch Nightmare on Elm Street for it over and over and love it. I know you can't forgive New Line and the makers of Part 4 for recasting, but they had to recast because I know because Patricia Arquette gave them an ultimatum. She wanted them to wait for her, but those movies, they have to be kind of made. They had to be made really quickly, and they couldn't do it. You just can't hold up a production to wait for an actor. So
sure.
So they
it
had
does
to
have
recast.
some of the best set pieces in the series, even from memory. I could say that. I see where you're coming.
He made the most out of like a very tight schedule, and they had a writer strike on that movie, so they had a really small schedule window to get the movie made and out there. And it was over just a few months where they had to get it written, shot, and released. And that's why I really appreciate it, because he did so much with it. And in general, he does that even on big productions like Cliffhanger. It just show what he could do with the production. He really puts a lot into it. And Prison is one of those movies where it's like a small movie, small budget, but he made the most out of it, and really entertaining. And I like that it's one of the only of those movies where the person who's electrocuted comes back to life, but it actually stays in the prison, where the rest of them, I think, all go outside of the prison.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's cool that it's in that setting. It really captures that vibe. It has a very eerie, creepy vibe to it too, which I like.
Absolutely, yeah. The prison setting is great. It's they purposely write it into the script where it's this kind of old prison that's been out of use for a long time, and they've just got to put it into the cycle again just for a little bit while they're building a new state-of-the-art prison. And it feels like I feel like the prison itself is a character in the movie, and I really love that about it.
Okay, we alluded to this one, my number 4, a couple of times. Here's the trailer.
It was an act of self-defense.
I didn't mean to kill him.
It was a prison run by cons.
I let them keep me in here, Lori.
Her sister was the victim.
A long way from home, Goldilocks.
Her sentence was murder.
Oh, sweet lips.
Now was the time for vendetta. Inside was a world she'd never known.
I need someone tonight. I need a man.
Hey, come on, I already serviced 3 girls today.
What are you in for?
Kill my husband and his mother. They deserved it.
Oh, what the hell? Let's make it 4.
I heard you've been asking a lot of questions.
I give the orders around here!
Nobody rips me off.
A world on the edge.
Curtis, do you bear me?
And about to explode.
And you're the only one left.
Here, justice is vendetta.
Okay, Vendetta. Now, I saw this one when it came out on VHS. It was a Vestron video. I think it was a Vestron production. I know it was released through Vestron Pictures and Concord Pictures. So you have Roger Corman and Vestron involved, which means it's gonna be good. I don't care what you might think. It's gonna be good. It's a women in prison picture. It's about the stunt woman who goes to jail. This time she purposely goes to jail to avenge the death of her innocent young sister. And we've seen this before in a movie where a sister will go above and beyond to avenge her, and that was, of course, with Savage Streets, and which was also, I believe, on Vestron VHS, which is amazing. Now we have a stunt woman who's, her job is to to take all these tumbles, to go through these car crashes, to get into these fights, and to kick some ass. And so now you put that into a prison setting. You're going to be in for some fun with Vendetta.
Absolutely.
For sure. Can I start by saying this movie should be called Karate Kicks? much like Death Warrant. There is a lot of kicking in this movie. Lots of kicking. That's how she gets every single person in this movie, is by kicking them, and they get hit in the head somehow, or like hit something really hard, or they get kicked and that knocks them out. This is that a lot, and I love it. I love that. That's her preferred method of getting these people, bringing her brand of justice.
Absolutely.
And I guess there could have been more inventive things. Yeah, they could have mixed it up a little bit more, but I don't mind that. I just think it's kind of fun and a little bit silly,
it adds to the charm.
It adds to the charm for sure. I love how it's set up that she gets into prison. I mean, that set piece alone is hilarious. She gets drunk. She steals a car, and she goes on this kind of crazy car ride, and she's commenting on it while really drunk. It goes a little like, was she really just doing all of this to like get arrested? Like, I'm sure there could have been more simple things she could have done, but
she steals a judge's car, and somehow the legal system appoints that judge over over the case,
who doesn't excuse himself whatsoever. He
it's amazing.
I'm going to sentence you because you. And then she pisses him off
he tries to let her off, basically. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
And then she pisses him off, and then she gets her sentence, and she knows she's going to be sent. Somehow she knows she's going to be sent to the same prison her sister was sent to, like in the desert somewhere. And then she goes, and then she quickly finds out the guilty, responsible people. And much like a slasher movie is set up, she goes one by one. She knocks them all off.
Yeah, absolutely. It does follow that formula.
And so you get like kind of a slashery women in prison movie with all the things that you love in a prison movie. Sandy Martin as the villain in this movie. My God.
Yeah.
She is so crazy and memorable in this movie. She's really sleazy, and I feel like she really goes above and beyond her character and her pay grade. Like, she just really oozes like craziness and sleaziness, and I love it. I feel like you wouldn't have this kind of character in a movie anymore.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, she's so good in her role. You kind of forget she's acting,
Totally.
She really embodies the character, and I had a lot of fun with this movie too. I thought that I don't know if you noticed, they had arcade games in the prison.
They did. That's right.
The prisoners were playing arcade games at one point, which I thought was awesome. And there's the lack of supervision during the kills was hilarious. Just the way she could isolate people, and even the places they were going without any kind of supervision was awesome. And even though the heroine was like a kind of a badass stunt woman, through the whole movie she just had this look on her face like she was like a overwhelmed mom, like just having she's got like a couple of toddlers or something. I've seen that look. I've got a kid, so she just had this furrowed brow and just looked like she was just kind of stressed out. But while she has this look on her face, she's like just kicking people to death, and I just thought it was a lot of fun. I'm really glad you picked it, actually, because it's a really fun one to talk about, and I'm glad Scream Factory put this out on Blue as well. It looked great.
It did look great. It really again, these movies probably look a lot better than they should on Blu-ray, and this one does really require some like suspension of disbelief, as you mentioned, like this, like because there is so much like what is going on in this prison where there's like you said, pinball, there's video games, and this is one of the rare women in prison movies where the system is actually nice. Like everyone, like the warden, all the people in charge are nice. You have Roberta Collins playing kind of like this woman who oversees them. I'm not sure what her exact role was as warden or assistant warden or whatever she was. She is nice, and she was like very protective of her from the get-go, and then she might actually play a hero late in the movie with a shotgun or some weapons, but everyone's like nice, and so you were kind of expecting that part to be like, like okay, but then you have the villain, and the villain is so villainous, so it makes up for like the lack of other villains in the movie. As you usually have in these movies. This is director Bruce Logan. He didn't do a lot, but he did work on the video for the Madonna video Borderline. He was the producer.
Oh, interesting.
He was the producer of that. And also, he was the cinematographer for Tron.
Oh,
which is very random. He has really random credits. So look up Bruce Logan as a
definitely.
Like I was looking at the credits, I'm like, okay, but yeah, Vendetta is a lot of fun. I urge you to pick up the Blu-ray. It's a double feature with Naked Vengeance, not Savage Vengeance.
I'm telling you, these names blend together.
They do blend together, but Vendetta is definitely one of my favorite stunt women in prison movies. I'm going to say that. It probably is my favorite stunt woman in prison movie. I'm going to call it.
All right. I think I could second that. That's a great one.
All right. Before we get into our number threes, I wrote in at the beginning of the podcast on like the Facebook walls and everything, and people chimed in what their favorite prison movies are.
Oh, cool.
Let's see what we have here. Speaking of Scream Factory, Jeff Nelson of Scream Factory on our Retro Movie Love Facebook page wrote in Reform Schoolgirls. Eric Threlfall, who's hosted this podcast of The Hysteria Continues, he wrote in, does Cube count? It has notes of prison as a wine connoisseur, I might say. Otherwise, Chained Heat for John Vernon Alone and Bad Girls Dormitory. John Presnell wrote in No Escape. And I was thinking about No Escape. That's a fun movie.
That's right. AKA Escape from Absalom, right?
It's on Blu-ray now from Umbrella Entertainment. I think it's all region, so I need to pick it up.
I forgot about that one. I think I really dug that movie when I was a kid. That's another one that'd be fun to go back to.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater. I remember enjoying that one, so I'm down for that. He also wrote in Midnight Express, Brandon Miller, Papillion, the original, and Green Mile. Dustin Ratke, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Bad Boys with Sean Penn. Nathan Johnson, also of the Hysteria Continues podcast. He wrote in Chained Heat, Concrete Jungle, Naked Cage. I know he's a big Naked Cage fan. We talked about that. We talked about it on Facebook last week. Reform Schoolgirls and Bad Girls Dormitory. I've never seen Bad Girls Dormitory, so I guess I need to.
I don't think I have either. The title is definitely attention grabbing.
I got a hole in my my women in prison love. Willie Greer, he wrote in Big Doll House. Dean Garman wrote in Stir Crazy, Escape from Alcatraz, Escape from New York, Cool Hand Luke, Stockade, The Shawshank Redemption, Lockup, Tango and Cash, Green Mile, and Death Warrant.
Nice.
And then Ben Schur, our pal and co-host of the show, wrote in Chicago. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone on Retro Movie Love's Facebook page for writing in your lists. If there are any more pop up, I'll read them out a little bit later. But let's get right into your number 3.
Started. 3 times the suspense.
It's here!
3 times the danger.
Run as fast as you can!
3 times the terror. Sigourney Weaver. Alien 3 starts Friday in theaters everywhere.
Okay, great. So my number 3 is going to be a little bit controversial. It is a movie that its own director has disowned, which is never a good sign. And it's a director who actually went on to a lot of success, so that's another bad sign. But I think you and I kind of share a bond where we adopt sequels that people might be kind of down on. I know you're a big fan of Halloween 5. I'm a the lone defender of Jason Takes Manhattan, which is a movie I grew up with and had fun with.
You're on that boat alone.
Yeah, that boat out of the lake into on a cruise to Manhattan or Vancouver. And I think like Halloween 3 for a long time I felt like was that movie for me that I was gonna die on a hill for. But I'm happy to say that seems to have picked up some popularity over the years, at least among the crowd of people that'd be listening to a show like this, I think. So my movie that I picked is actually Alien 3 from 1992. And I rewatched the 144-minute assembly cut from 2003. It was basically based on a work print, from what I understand. This is a movie that I was probably too young to see when it came out, but I saw it and I loved it. I grew up with Aliens being one of my favorite movies of all time. It still is. I love that movie so much. I know Alien is kind of the masterpiece in the series, and I can see that. But Aliens was always my favorite. I love the Marines. I love the characters. I love the action. I love the thrills. It's just such a good movie, and when this came out, I don't know, maybe I was too young to kind of watch it with the critical eye and see all the things that were kind of wrong with it. And it does have its flaws. I can see that. Even just as a follow-up to Aliens, it's really a downer to kind of think everyone who's survived that movie after everything they went through, by the end of this movie, spoiler alert, every single one of them is dead. It is a downer in a way, if you look at it like that, but if you kind of just judge it on its own as this really cool kind of sci-fi horror movie set on a prison planet, I really think it holds up well with other movies from that era. I was thinking of movies like Mimic and Species and some of the other stuff that came out in the 90s that I do love, and I really think this kind of is one of the best of them. And it has a great cast, a very British cast, randomly. I think the only American character besides Sigourney Weaver's Ripley might be Charles S. Dutton. For most of the movie, at least. But you got Charles Dance in there playing a likable character, a good guy for a change, and he's really likable. There are some differences with the cuts that I've seen. In one version, the xenomorph comes out of dog. That was kind of the version I grew up with. In the assembly cut, it comes out of an ox. I think for the movie it works better as a dog, just kind of the way the creature moves, the way that we see it. Mm-hmm. The effects, I can see how people might be turned off by some of them and see some of the effects as dated, but I think they're really good. I really love the tunnel vision that you see the alien creature chasing the prisoners with during the climax of the movie. Lance Henriksen has a couple of great cameos in this. He may be playing two different characters in the movie, spoiler alert, which I thought was a lot of fun. I really love it. I'm telling you, I think I just might have been too young to know wasn't that good. And by the time I was kind of old enough to figure out that it wasn't popular and that a lot of people hated it, it was too late. I already loved it. And I actually still own the entire trading card set for this movie. Which is funny because I don't think I have the trading card set for any movie, but I still have this and it's in great condition. And I remember I looked at the first card. I don't have it with me right now, but I looked at the first card in the set, and it's kind of like a log by Ripley, kind of narrating what's going on. And it starts off so optimistic about how they survived, and Hicks, is injured, but it's not going to be too bad. I think we'll be able to repair Bishop. It just starts. It makes it so much worse, actually. Like kind of starting off on that note. But yeah, I mean, I did get to meet Lance Henriksen and Michael Biehn at Monsterpalooza also, and when I went a couple of years ago, and they're both really cool guys. And I actually asked Michael Biehn if it was true that he got paid more for the use of his likeness in this movie than he did for his actual role in Aliens. And he laughed, and he said, it might have not been more, but it was pretty close. And he basically said that he felt like a jerk for cursing out a guy who went on to be like an award-winning director. But gosh, I don't remember all the details, but I do remember he had a really good sense of humor about it. And I was gonna mention, I noticed this time watching it that Walter Hill was listed as a producer. I'm not sure what his involvement was, the extent of it. I'd have to look more into that, but like we mentioned before, I think we both love Walter Hill, and it's always great to see him involved, especially since he was fundamental to the first film. So yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious what your thoughts are on Alien 3, because I know this is a divisive one.
It is a divisive one. It's because of that. I've only seen it maybe once or twice in my life. I've seen it twice for sure. I saw it the first time in the theater, and then on video when it came out on video, and that's it. I remember feeling kind of icky while watching it. It feels very icky. Sure. Not in the sense, it just feels like very sweaty and hot. Oh, yeah. And the day I saw it, it came out, I believe, in May of 1992. It was a heat wave in New York City. And it was it was the first day of the heat wave, and it was super, super hot when I came out of the theater. That's what I remember most about Alien 3. I was already hot while watching it because it's such a sweaty movie, and then I came out of the theater and it was like blazing hot.
It's a 4D experience. That's great.
Totally. I love Sigourney Weaver. I think she could never do me any wrong in any movie that she's in, and they took her character in a bit of a different direction for 3 and especially in 4. But in 3 she was still the Ripley that we knew, but a hardened, toughened one, obviously, because of where things went with the first 2 films. It changes a bit in tone for sure, and look, and I don't know, you kind of have to adapt to all those changes. And maybe I need to sit down again and watch this movie for the first time in a long time, and just watch it as as Sigourney Weaver in prison, and then I think I might
with a killer creature, right?
With a killer creature. It happens to be a killer creature in there. I think one of the main problems I remember having with this movie was that I couldn't follow a lot of the characters because they felt very similar, or they look similar.
I've heard that before, actually, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I've heard that complaint, and I can see it because they're all these basically a bunch of British dudes with shaved heads wearing the same clothes. But maybe I've just seen it so many times that they all have their characteristics to them, at least the ones that are focused on, and I don't have any trouble telling them apart. There's just funny little quirks with all these characters, right. And there's it's funny, I noticed this time there's this like religious brotherhood that they've kind of developed there in the prison, that Charles S. Dutton's kind of taken a role in leading them and kind of giving them a purpose for their lives, and there's a character who kind of is a coward that well, there's a couple of characters that are cowards that kind of redeem themselves without getting too much into that. But I did notice that Charles Dunn scolds one of the characters, telling them, "Oh, I forgot you have a deal with God. You're gonna live forever." When he doesn't want to face the creature, he doesn't want to try to help them. And that character that he says that to, though, that he says you had to deal with God to live forever, that's the only character that lives. And I don't know. There's just a lot of. I mean, I know it was a disaster as far as the production. I get it. I don't even think David Fincher's even rewatched the. I think he said he never saw the assembly cut, or maybe he never saw it at all. I don't remember, but there's just something about this movie where it's a drop off from the first two. Don't get me wrong, but I wish we had I wish other series had a part 3 of this quality, like Terminator, Predator, whatever, RoboCop, which I do kind of like RoboCop 3. That's another story. It's a guilty pleasure, but I blame Scream Factory for that too. But I wish that we got all these part 3s back then in the early 90s, where there were still certain characteristics and qualities to these movies that just got lost later on. I mean, to me, this is kind of where the series ends, to be honest. Like, I not really a fan of 4, and the Alien versus Predator movies weren't really any good. I haven't been a fan of Prometheus, and I think we kind of talked about this off the air, but I thought Prometheus and Alien Covenant were just like really dull and pretentious, and I'm glad I saw them. I'll support these kind of movies because I want them to keep getting made, but I'm not gonna go back to those. But I do think Alien 3 deserves to be reevaluated and maybe rediscovered, and it's not going to be for everyone, but it is a lot of fun, and there's there's so much lore in that universe that I grew up reading I'm a big comic book fan too, and there was actually a really good run in the comics from Dark Horse Comics where it was these like further adventures of Newt and Hicks together. And I'd love to see something like that. I'd love to see what was discussed with Neil Blomkamp, I want to say, was supposed to make a Alien sequel with Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn returning, and I guess that got shelved. But I think there's a lot more you can get out of this franchise if you kind of go back to the basics of what it was, and I think this movie does that, and I think it does it really well, and I hope you do give it another shot, and if you do, let me know what you think.
God, I really am upset with you. Because you're making me want to watch Alien 3 again. How dare you?
Well, hey, this is revenge for you making me want to watch Halloween 5 again. So it all evens out.
All right, I'm sold. My wife will probably watch it too because she's into action and sci-fi. So, and she's an Anglophile. So yeah, okay, we'll watch Alien 3 tonight, and I'll report back to you tomorrow.
That sounds like a plan.
I think this now, because Halloween was rebooted in the way it was with having another timeline. I think you could probably do that Neil Blomkamp movie where it's like it goes back to like Ripley,
yeah.
And Newt and Michael Bihn's character, and then their further adventures. Maybe that might be cool.
Sure.
All right, yeah. So Alien 3, I'm definitely going to revisit. Thank you again.
All right, man. And don't blame me if you don't like it.
I won't blame you. I'll blame. I don't know. I'll blame myself for doing a prison podcast. All right. Here is number 3.
He was 6 months away from a normal life.
You plan on getting married when you get out of here?
Oh, yeah, that's the plan.
Where are we going?
Until a warden obsessed with revenge
Gateway, 6 months could be a lifetime.
took his future away.
I want to know about Frank Leone.
The odds of surviving? 1,000,000 to 1. Stallone. Lock up. Rated R.
This is my only real machismo kind of prison movie, like I guess you can call it that, because Stallone in prison, yes, that comes with the territory. If you're putting Stallone in prison, he's been in prison in a couple of movies. I would say this, Tango and Cash, he was in prison. He was in prison in Escape Plan. I haven't seen the direct-to-video Escape Plan 2. I don't know why he's
neither have I.
in direct-to-video movies, as well as being in Creed, whatever. Yeah, I'll get to that eventually one day. But Lockup is my favorite of his prison pictures. Lockup is, I guess I gravitate towards this one. I saw this one when it came out in 1989 and enjoyed it. But, it was like, I was just watching prison movies because that was what I did back then, when they first came out or on VHS, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But now I kind of really appreciate it more because it is so well made. It was directed by John Flynn, who's made some pretty solid movies over the years. He did Rolling Thunder, he did Out for Justice with Seagal, he made Defiance, The Outfit, Brain Scan. Bestseller, that's right.
Yeah, I love John Flynn.
Yeah, he's made some really good movies. This is a good, exciting, gritty kind of movie, and I guess maybe one of the only few prison movies to actually be filmed in a real prison, and and it really feels like it. It was actually shot at East Jersey State Prison in Rahway, New Jersey. So here in my state, there's this prison that Judge Stallone once rattled the cages of, and he is he's good in it. He's not like a dynamic character, like someone who's has a lot of characterization. He's still out in prison.
But he's not Cobra, but he's still
right. He's quiet. He's trying to do his time. He's about to get out, and he has like these weekend privileges where he's like getting out of prison, gets to see his wife, Darlene Flugel, who recently passed away, which is pretty sad. But then he gets transferred unexpectedly to the more maximum security side of the prison, and because of the new warden played by Donald Sutherland. And Donald Sutherland is completely evil, of course, and has it out for him, and likes to remind him that time and time again in this movie that Stallone crossed him by trying to expose him again. The warden or powers that be in these movies need to be exposed for the criminals that they actually are, and not the actual. And how the system is should be on trial as well, not just the prisoners.
Sure.
So there's some of that in there. There's the character that he takes under his wing, who obviously causes a lot of trouble, gets him into trouble, and then that character may not survive by the end of the movie, as they don't usually. There's the wise older black character, as there is in these movies. There's a lot of the cliches, but they're kind of drawn in an interesting way in this one, because they're kind of built in a really more of a realistic way than some of the other movies that I've talked about, for sure. It's done in a very lean, mean, and gritty way, this movie, and I kind of like that about it. It reminds me of The Longest Yard and the original one, because it does feel like kind of you get that vibe of a real prison vibe, and all the stuff that goes along with it. So I've always enjoyed it. It's actually pretty exciting too. It's very exciting as an action movie. You get really into it. By the end of the movie, you're really with Stallone, and you hope you can get out of the situation. It's Stallone, and he more than likely will, because that's what that's what you go into with a Stallone movie. But I don't know. My wife and I really enjoyed revisiting this movie, and so I have it here because I think as a good male, an MIP, not a WIP, a male in prison movie, I think it's really well done and really well made. So I definitely have it here. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I'm so glad you included this, because I would have tried to find a way to include it on my list if you didn't. It's a great movie. I want to say this might even be a movie I watched growing up as well. I just hadn't seen for a while. I do remember there's like a bench press death. Kind of going back to some of the other movies we were mentioning earlier.
Oh, yes, that's a recurring thing in these movies.
And I remember that being kind of like the talk of the playground, and kind of being a big thing that I just remember that for some random reason. And I think the movie has a really good supporting cast. I like John Amos. I kind of expected him to be a bad guy.
Right.
Maybe I was just thinking of Die Hard 2 or something like that. But I liked his character a lot. I thought Sonny Landham was great, who I love from Predator, of course, and other movies. And
he's always scary. Like, he's always good at playing scary guys. Yeah,
he is. And I think this kind of shows how big Arnold Schwarzenegger is, because you don't realize how big he is in Predator, but when you see him next to Stallone, oh my god. It's just Donald Sutherland. I think that guy just stopped aging at some point, because he's just kind of stayed the same, and he's great. He's really good in this role. Tom Sizemore's got a good role. It's a good movie. I love the auto shop montage.
Yeah.
I love the football scene. There's a very dramatic football scene that, for my money, is probably better than the Longest Yard or the remake or any of that. I don't know. I just think it's great, the way it's filmed, and the way it's just so fun. And it's very, if you can sneak in a little bit of a sports movie when you've got Stallone, I think that's probably a good idea. And he's really good at playing that kind of an underdog character. But yeah, and I really love this movie. I'm really glad you picked it, and I was really happy to revisit it.
That was one of the things my wife mentions. Oh, the sports in this movie too, perfect, because she likes a good sports movie, and he manages to fit in those cliches as well, which is I love that. I love that about it. It's like a movie that gives you everything you want in a good, exciting action prison movie and of the 80s. And
yeah, absolutely.
It's not as glossy as, like, say, Cobra or something like that. I think it does feel pretty real, and also have that heightened sense of reality as well, for sure.
Sure,
I enjoy it a lot. All right, let's get into our number 2s. Here's yours.
You're on good. Wish you'd stop being so good to me, Captain. Don't you ever talk that way to me. Never! Never! What we've got here is failure to communicate. Some men you just can't reach. So you get what we had here last week, which is the way he wants it. Well, he gets it. And I don't like it any more than you may.
Okay, so my number 2 movie is actually very near and dear to my heart, and I had a hard time not ranking it number 1, actually. And I'll explain that, I guess, in a little bit. But that movie is Cool Hand Luke from 1967, a little bit out of the realm of the usual retro movie love range of movies, I would say. Cool Hand Luke, I want to say I saw this when I was probably in middle school. I was really young, and my uncle showed it to me, my dad's brother. And he was a really cool guy. He'd served time and struggled with a lot of things in his own life, and the fact that he kind of showed me this movie has given it a lot more meaning in my life. It's kind of stuck with me. I feel like the fact that he passed away not long after he showed me this movie from an overdose, unfortunately. And
sorry.
Of course. And I think that just kind of adds to part of what makes this movie so special to me. But I feel like even without the personal memories that I have attached to it, it's just so good. It's such a good movie, and it's very iconic. Everybody knows what we've got here is a failure to communicate, and I remember when I got a little bit older, I was really into Guns N' Roses, and they have a song called Civil War where they use a clip from the movie. They use that speech, actually, from the warden at the beginning of the movie. And I thought that was so cool. It just kind of gave me that nostalgia because that was at an age where I didn't have this massive movie collection. I hadn't seen it for years, but I remembered, and I was like, oh wow, I probably listened to that song a million times just because I thought it was so cool that it had Cool Hand Luke in the beginning. And if just kind of to go off of that for a second, I did get to see Guns N' Roses here in LA a couple of years ago since they started touring again, and I remember they played that song and that clip was at the beginning of it, and I turned to my wife to tell her that was from one of my favorite movies of all time, Cool Hand Luke, and this guy that was sitting next to me said, oh, I thought it was from Major Payne or something like that. And I remember just I think I wanted to switch seats with my wife after that. I was like, oh God, I'm not going to talk to you. But, God, I don't know. It's okay if you like Major Payne, guys. I just love this movie so much. It has such a great cast. I think Paul Newman is amazing in this movie. I think George Kennedy is amazing in this movie. There's some awesome supporting roles from, Harry Dean Stanton, Dennis Hopper. Joe Don Baker has like a blink and you'll miss him kind of cameo and a small role. It's just so good, and it's there's a line in there whenever I see this movie brought up on the internet. There's a line that I always post, which is just no man can eat 50 eggs, and I don't know if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't, you should see it. And it's just a really special movie to me. But I will say, it's not a downer of a movie. There is a lot of heartache in it, but it's somehow a lot of fun. It just has a lot of heart. And I will say, though, for whatever reason, it just kind of makes me sad in a way. So I don't watch it as much as some other movies on this list, including my number one movie, which we'll get to, which is the only reason I think I didn't put it as my number one, because I just, it's not that it's necessarily heavy. I don't want to turn anyone off to it by saying that. It's just, it's got a lot of stuff attached to it, at least for me personally, that it is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's probably my favorite drama of all time, if it falls under that category. But gosh, it's not a movie I can, pop in every week or whatever, unlike some of these. So, so Cool Hand Luke, what were your thoughts, Meep?
Now, this is the one I didn't have in my collection, so I bought it right away on Blu-ray. I was like, why don't I have Cool Hand Luke? I haven't seen it in a long time. There was a period in my childhood where I was going through a lot of the classics, because my video store had a big selection in general, but they had a really good selection of classic films. And so I'd rented Cool Hand Luke. I remember enjoying it, but it's been so long since I've revisited it that I'm like, okay, it's time. It's a good time now to revisit Cool Hand Luke. And then I was like, oh, I was a little bit hesitant to right away get into rewatching it, because it's so iconic of a film, and I kind of knew what I was going to get into. But then I found myself while watching it really, really liking it, and that it was actually really well made, really well written, and really well acted by everyone. And Paul Newman's that kind of actor who felt a little bit more to me like a screen presence than an actor, like an actor that like a consummate actor. But he's actually really good in the film, and and he adds a lot to the character, and nuance too, and George Kennedy, of course, in his Oscar-winning role, is really great in the film. I think he won Oscars for George Kennedy and for maybe something else like screenplay or something. It's really well done. It's that beginning of the cycle of American films where they were. Where it was changing. I'm not a huge fan of American 60s movies from before this change, where I feel like they were very fluffy, they were very static, They felt like very studio driven, like felt like a lot of them were filmed in studios and just very by the numbers. But this change happened around this time period, 1967, where American films, this was widely known information, by the way, where movies were changing and getting grittier, were anti-authority, like movies like this and Bonnie and Clyde and the great American cinema of the late 60s and early 70s. So things were changing, and this movie was definitely one of the first movies to really show that, and by using its movie star and its tone to really drive home some of its ideas that were not so expected in a general American movie or a hit of the time. And I like that about it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we might take some of that for granted. But you have to kind of keep that in mind, that this was new territory in a lot of ways. And it really, there's just so much symbolism in there, and so many great messages. And I mean, I love the fact that he basically, gets into this whole mess by taking apart parking meters, just randomly getting drunk and taking apart parking meters, and that's what starts this whole cycle. And just it's such a well-written character. I mean, they kind of touch on his war record and how he kind of came out of the military. Even though he was a war hero, he came out with the same rank as he went in, and he just kind of laughs and brushes it off as I was just passing time. Or when they ask him about violating the parking meters, he says he's just settling scores. And you don't need to like dig into it too much. It just gives you enough to really get a feel of his character. And there's a really touching scene where he learns that not to get into spoilers, but there's a scene where he learns that his mom has passed, and it's so well done. He sits there and plays the ukulele and sings. I want to say, what's that song called? Plastic Jesus. And the next day, this guy's mom just died, and he's getting ready to go, out with the road crew to, do what they do every day. And the warden says, this guy's mom died, and when people's moms die, they start getting rabbit in them, rabbit blood, I think they call it. And they think about running away to go to the funeral and stuff. So they basically, instead of giving this guy like some peace or something for what he's just lost, they put him in the hole. And just so he doesn't get any ideas, and it's for your own good. And one of the guards who's putting him in there tells him, I say a prayer for your mom, I'm sorry about this, I'm just doing my job. And he's like, boss, like, calling it your job doesn't make it right. It's just so good. It's so good. And I feel like that's a movie I could talk about for an hour or so. We don't, we could kind of leave it at that.
It is filled with a lot of standout scenes like that, for sure. And, and like you mentioned, the symbolism is pretty great and heavier towards the last part of the movie. It should be pretty obvious to you, a lot of the parallels that the movie is drawing, but I think it does it in such a great, interesting way.
I just to touch on that, after the aforementioned No Man Can Eat 50 Eggs scene, which is fantastic and just one of the greatest scenes in a movie ever, and he's left there laying on the table. He's laying like he's crucified. I don't know if that caught your eye or not, but that has to be on purpose.
No, I feel like it is. Yeah,
it's just it's a great movie. I think it's one of the greatest movies of all time. But I think that's enough on Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah, and the last shot alone, I mean, that overhead crane shot is obviously very symbolic.
Beautiful
of what it was trying to say. I like this one a lot. It's a good film. I'm glad I get to revisit it, and that's in my collection now. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Glad you liked it.
Here's my number 2, which is exactly the same movie in tone.
Here they are, the loveliest girls in the history of socially conscious cinema. Reform School Girls.
Your time is doubled.
So's your chin.
So young. So bad.
Bring me something to wipe my shoe.
So what?
Complete control!
Reform School Girls. Rated R. Starts July 11th in selected theaters.
Yes, Reform Schoolgirls is my number 2 movie. Wow, Reform Schoolgirls does everything it needs to do for me for a women in prison picture. That's why it's my favorite of them, because it's a New World picture movie. So Cannon Films gives you everything you want with Cannon Films. The Roger Corman stuff gives everything with Roger Corman stuff, and New World. I'm hitting up all 3 of my favorite companies that were operating in the 80s, and New World really gives you a lot of colorful, poppy kind of fun, and you get that with Reform Schoolgirls, with plenty of sleaze, plenty of girls with really huge hair, and lots of negligees in prison, as there was in prison, I'm sure. It's kind of hysterical, this movie. Wendy O. Williams as the villain of the piece, ostensibly the villain of the movie, right? She's the one that's kind of controlling everything. She's the one all the girls are afraid of. She's scary. I mean, she was a great punk singer, Wendy Williams and the Plasmatics, and one of her songs may have already appeared or will appear on this podcast. I think it's a lot. I think she adds a lot to this movie and not to her role. I mean, I feel like she really embodies that character. Her stage presence was all about destroying TVs and technology, and she's very anti-authority, and I love that about her, and as a person, and it really comes through as this villain, who easily outshines, like, say, some of the nicer people in the movie, or the lead in this case.
I would argue that there's probably only one character in this movie that she doesn't outshine. Well, I'll let you talk about that.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, Sybil Danning is super hard not to miss. I mean, Sybil Danning.
The entrance of her character is hilarious.
She's great.
She comes with her own entrance music. It's awesome.
It's so awesome, and Sybil Danning will always add another level to a movie, and certainly for eye candy and all that fun stuff. She is great.
Absolutely.
And Pat asked.
Yep.
As though I know who you're talking. I knew exactly who you're going to go to with. Tell me what about Pat Ast really in this movie?
Oh my God, Edna, right?
Edna.
I can't. I just couldn't get over that character. I felt like she was almost out of a different genre.
I think she was in a John Waters movie.
Oh, sure.
That's what it felt like, kind of, right?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And she's just so good and so evil. And, that poor cat. Oh, my God. I can't get over that. And just she's just such a great foil to the characters. And I like that she kind of is under a little pressure herself from Sybil Danning. Mm-hmm. And she just goes so over the top, at the end. Oh my God, there's a scene where the prison review board or something comes in, and her and Sybil Danning are sitting there smoking cigarettes, looking all cool, and I don't know, it's just so much fun. It's a really, really good one. I'm glad you picked it. I don't, you know what, I don't think I'd ever seen this before.
Oh, yeah.
Surprisingly. Yeah, it didn't ring any bells watching it. With the name, I would have assumed I had, but watching it again, I don't think I had, and it oh my God, this is another one where I almost felt like it was a fever dream. Because and both happen to have more, prisoners in lingerie and stuff than the others, I guess. Going back to, the movies we've been talking about, but I don't know. I can't recommend this movie enough, but you have to be in the right mindset, I guess I would say.
You have to be up for something really kind of silly and outlandish. I mean, you have to. Yeah, this is the opposite of Lock Up or Cool Hand Luke or whatever, because it really does go to silly places, like a lot of these Roger Corman movies I'm sorry, a lot of these New World movies do, and but I grew up with this one in the 80s. I saw it in the theater. I saw it on home video. I watched it a lot. If you like big hair and negligees, this is your go-to movie of the 80s. This has two actresses from Friday the 13th movies in them. Darcy DeMoss, who's got huge hair in this movie. She's one of like Wendy Williams' gang members. And Tiffany Helm from Friday 5. She doesn't break dance in this one though.
Unfortunately.
Sadly, this is the only thing missing in this movie is breakdancing. I feel like they should have.
It does have a great soundtrack, though. I'll say
it does. Yeah, Wendy Williams on the soundtrack really adds a lot to the movie, like she does with her character. I think it really gives it another level. That's probably what makes this movie so memorable too.
Yeah,
beyond some of the women in prison stuff. It's, a lot of that women in prison stuff is pretty. There are a lot of these movies are pretty similar in those regards. They kind of hit up all the same tropes, but because of the actors, because of the texture they provide, and this one with lots of texture in that prison, it's like you go in like my wife's like, what are they? Do they allow all this kind of negligee? All these kinds of dressing and undressing like in prison. Like this is, I've never seen this before in a movie, and it's very unique to reform school girls, what makes it special. I think Wendy O. Williams herself, like she refused to allow them to dress her. Everything that she wears in the movie was from her own personal collection.
Was she wearing anything in the movie?
She's barely wearing anything, which is amazing. Which adds to it too. Like that's what she wanted to wear. That's what she felt comfortable with wearing. And God bless her for that. And
that's awesome.
God bless the movie gods. I mean, really, the movie gods. Really, thank you so much for delivering me Reform Schoolgirls, formative movie of my childhood. It continues to be. Now, my wife. This was the first, I think, women in prison movie that I watched with my wife, and then she was hooked.
Awesome.
So she's like, I want more of that, please. And we thoroughly enjoyed that. So this is going to be in constant rotation now because of that. So thank you again for reintroducing some of these movies back. Thank you, Ara, for doing this podcast with me. Let's get into our number ones. And I'm also a huge fan of your number one, so this is really a shared one. Here it is. Here's your number one.
If he climbs over the wall, they'll blow him off. If he tries to fly over the river, they'll shoot him down. If he comes back alone, they'll explode his brain. New York, 1997. One man has 24 hours to break in and break out before it's too late for escape. John Carpenter's Escape from New York. Rated R.
Okay, so my number one is a movie that some of you may have seen before. A little movie called Escape from New York. We did talk about Kurt Russell a little bit earlier, and he is my favorite actor of all time. And John Carpenter happens to be my favorite director of all time. So pairing them together, it was hard for me not to place this as my number one. I just love this movie so much. Everything about it. The supporting cast is amazing. Adrienne Barbeau, who I also had the luxury of meeting before, and she asked me where I was from. I met her with my wife and daughter, and I told her we're Armenian, and she's like, "Oh, I'm Armenian too." It's I have that background, and she's so cool, and she's still beautiful, and I love seeing her in this movie. She's just, oh my gosh, Adrienne. We can do like an Adrienne Barbeau podcast one day.
Oh, please, let's do it.
And this movie also has the first British American president, I think, Donald Pleasance.
the good Donald.
Yeah, he's
the right
amazing.
Donald.
The right Donald, yeah. And this also has Harry Dean Stanton, who was in Cool Hand Luke. So I could have tried to cheat and pair these together too, but I didn't want to do that to you. It also has Tom Atkins, who's one of my favorite actors of all time, who I've also met, luckily enough, and he was a really cool guy. It's got Charles Cypher, who I also met and is in a bunch of John Carpenter movies. Isaac Hayes is here, Lee Van Cleef, of course. Everybody knows Lee Van Cleef. Just amazing movie. I love that it's set in the future of 1997. Like how I mentioned before with Fortress, and set in 2017, which that I guess that wasn't too long ago. But I just loved seeing these futures that have already passed. Like, gosh, I don't know off the top of my head. Like, I think I want to say Predator 2 was in 97 or something as well, where LA is just total like warscape, and it's a lot of fun. And this movie is just so well shot. I think again, we mentioned Dean Cundey before, and he just brings so much to these movies. I think it's easy to overlook things like cinematography and just just the visuals that are in front of you in a movie, but they're just amazing. I think the sets are amazing. The soundtrack, of course, is amazing. Gosh, I feel like there's just everything about this movie is so great. I'm sure I'm forgetting other supporting actors and stuff as well off the top of my head, but I think that this is one of my favorite characters as far as Snake Plissken ever in a movie. It's hard to know I don't know where I would rank him. I hope I never have to rank them as far as these Kurt Russell
don't do it
characters. Exactly, but he's just so great, and he's so cool, and I love that he starts off the movie by saying "Call me Snake," and he ends the movie by saying the name's Plissken, and just everybody he meets says that they thought they heard he was dead. It's such a great character. Like, it comes with like this unspoken history to this character that you don't even need to get into. You just feel it throughout the movie, and he's just so good. I think I read that the eye patch was even Kurt Russell's idea. I gotta look that up again. I don't remember, but it's a great movie. I want to say I read somewhere that Jamie Lee Curtis's voice makes a cameo in this movie. I'd have to look into that again. But this is John Carpenter in his heyday. I just don't think there was anyone who did it better and who had more variety as far as the kinds of genres they could do. And do well, and I love this movie so much. Gosh, I don't know what else to say about it, to be honest, other than if you want to start going over the entire plot, I'll be happy to do that. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on Escape from New York.
Oh, one of my all-time favorites. I mean, I should not like this movie because technically, how much of it was shot in New York? Like a day or two.
Exactly.
They actually shot in New York, so I should be like offended because as a native New Yorker. But I mean, what he did with I guess again a smaller budgeted movie, it did so much, and it really comes across. And he made a world. They talk about world building now with movies and like.
Absolutely.
And universes, and they really do that with this movie. I'm surprised they haven't done a kind of sequel or anything to this movie since
Escape from LA.
Oh my god! Wait, rewind. That's what I like. I like Escape from LA. I feel like they really could draw more onto this world.
Sure.
Escape from LA. Yes, it's a fun movie, and I still like Snake Plissken in that movie.
Sure, I get why people hate it, but it is fun.
I enjoy it. Yeah, I definitely enjoy it. But Escape from New York is obviously a legit great movie. It has all the elements that come together with what made John Carpenter such a great director of the time. And
Absolutely.
Of course, Dean Cundey's cinematography really, really helps. And I don't know. And Deborah Hill, of course, and her involvement.
Of course, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned her.
Is unlimited value. And Ernest Borgnine as Cabby. I always love him in this movie.
Yes, there's someone I forgot to mention. Great character actor, awesome role.
The only thing I don't like about this movie, and this is a pet peeve, is that when people start dying off, they die off like in quick succession. Like I don't want to see some of those people die. I like this character so much that I'm like, can't they just live so they could be in a sequel or something? Come on,
and they were so close.
No. And that's like right by the end of the movie, like one after the other, they just start getting killed off. I'm like, Don't
I'm
do that to
with
me.
you on that. And as I was going to mention, I do have this has gotten some love, thankfully. Scream Factory did a great release, which I have, and they also did a great steelbook, which I have. And I'm sure you have too. And it's
I don't actually have the steelbook.
Oh, well, I mean, even just the regular release is fantastic. The steelbook is just cool because you reminded me, the artwork on the steelbook is like that last scene, basically, the cover, which is really cool. I like that they really captured it. And I like that you're kind of sympathetic for the president throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I like that Snake kind of tests him a little bit at the end and doesn't like what he hears.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I think what kind of, and I'm sure everyone's seen this movie. I don't mind getting too much into details, but I think one of the things that kind of pushed this to number one for me, even though it might have been anyways, because it's just such an awesome movie, is when Snake's just walking away and pulling the tape apart. I just love that so much. It's so great after everything they've been through.
We talked about anti-authority, like that kind of movement in the late 60s and early 70s. No one embodies that more in his movies than John Carpenter does.
Absolutely.
Because that's who he is, and that's very much ingrained in his personality and what he wanted to come across in his movies. For sure, you see that with Snake Plissken's character, as he's like the embodiment of that, and he just, he answers to no one. he is a one man force to be reckoned with, and that's why this character kind of lives on so much in our culture, because in a lot of ways we want to be like Snake. We don't want to follow the rules.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. You mentioned the potential for spin-offs and world building in this movie, and I just want to mention there was a very popular video game series that is still going called Metal Gear. I don't know if any listeners here are gamers too. I'm not a big one myself. That was always more my brother's department. But Metal Gear was a very popular one. Where the main character's name was Snake, and it's a really blatant ripoff of this world, and like he kind of goes on his own adventures and does his own thing. Like the plot wise, it's not the same. There's actually a character in the later games that looks like John Carpenter, which I think has to be on purpose too. But I want to say in one of the games they even have his character go by the alias Pliskin, which is like, okay, at this point they're just flaunting the fact that they're ripping off at these movies. But it's I mean, this just goes to show the movies appeal even over in Japan, where these games were developed and came from. Because I'm talking about like back on the old Super Nintendos and stuff like that. Like, I mean, these games have been around forever and are still going. And this character has this, not even just the character, but this kind of a world just has so much potential, like you're saying. And I feel like they really do a great job with it here. And I'm glad Escape from LA exists. Like, it's there for us to go to and have fun with if we want a little more. But even just on its own, like Escape from New York really is something special.
It really is. It's hard to even just to put into words. Like, it just means a lot to us as movie fans. It just feels like the embodiment of like what's all that's good about John Carpenter in the 80s.
Absolutely.
We love it. All right, I'm going to get into our number ones in a moment. My number one in a moment, but I just wanted to read off more lists before I forget. Let's see. I posted this on Cinema de Meep's Facebook page. I'm going to read it off. Eric Lazaron, Prison. From the Rennie Harlan. Kim Madison wrote in Midnight Express and Fortune in Men's Eyes. Jeffrey Jones, I'm not sure if that's the actor or not, but probably not. Penitentiary. Kayla Lasky, Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption. Oren Zora just wrote. He put an image of Death Warrant with Van Damme. Awesome. Brian Ventura, Lockup and Fortress. John Philip Dillon, Hellhole and Vendetta. Zane Reeves, Kiss of the Spider Woman, good film. Jared Dennison, Chained Heat. Steph Dumas, just said Bronson. Oh, Bronson, yes, Bronson, that movie. Johnny Caps, Reform School Girls and Chained Heat. Andrew Clear, I Don't Mind Escape Plan or whatever with Arnold and Sly. David Hemming, Escape from New York. Alexander Serper, Star Trek V.
Interesting.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. I guess they were in. Yeah. David Kidd, Women's Prison Massacre. I don't know if I'd ever put Star Trek V in a good list, but that's just me though. Philip Pine, Cool Hand Luke. Chad Hemsley, The Big Birdcage. Grindhouse Heaven. James Meinhold, Bound by Honor, aka Blood In, Blood Out. Jason Pazkowski, Papillion. Ryan Richards wrote in Beyond Reanimator. Chris Salmon, Brubaker. Marcin Wanzel, Midnight Express. Mark Morrissey wrote in Anal Sluts Behind Bars 14. Okay. I missed that one. I lost the series after part 8. Mark Robles, Concrete Jungle. And Henry Babenko, Bad Boys 1983, and An Innocent Man were really accurate from what I've been told. Okay. From what I've learned from being my stint in prison too. Yes. No, I've never been in prison. John Donahue, a co-host of the show. He wrote in The Green Mile, The Blues Brothers, Shawshank Redemption, Papillion, Escape from New York, The Great Escape, Lockup, Tango and Cash, The Longest Yard Original. Brian Norton, Concrete Jungle. My pal and co-host Daniel Archer, The Big Dollhouse, Fire at Fire, The Boys of Silbach Q, Cape Fear, which is only kind of a prison movie, Reform School Girls, With or Without the Facts of Life Girls, but preferably with.
I think based on your dream, right?
Yeah, that's right. He snuck that in there. I love anytime there's a Facts of Life reference, I'm all for it. Pat Lighthelp, Reform School Girls, Chained Heat, Caged Men, Born Innocent, and Big Dollhouse. I hear Caged Men is pretty good, so I need to check that out.
Yeah, same.
Andrew Parker, my pal, he was on the show before. If Fortress is technically a prison movie, he's up for that. Jorg Bauer, he wrote a lengthy list. The Women of St. Quentin, Bad Boys, The Longest Yard, Escape from Alcatraz, Birdman of Alcatraz, Shawshank Redemption. I also love the French prison movie L'Audition with Richard Boringer as a brutal prison guard who manipulates the system so the innocent lover of his wife, played by Victoria April, stays instead of a few days for over 2 years in prison. Excellent movie. It was released in the U.S. under 3 different titles: The Caged Heart, The Bill, and The Patsy. Check it out, you have the chance. Again, that's L'Audition with those additional titles. I forgot one of the best, Midnight Express, the movie starting my love for prison movies. Thank you, Jorg. And Jenny Day, my pal, wrote in Reform School Girls. Let's get into my number one.
It's impossible to imagine a more exciting film, says Rona Barrett. Rex Reed calls it a colossal triumph. Months before its release, it stunned and overwhelmed special preview audiences. The movie is Midnight Express, rated R. See it soon at a theater near you.
Midnight Express. Okay, I went for a classy one for my number one. I went with Midnight Express because you took Escape from New York. Because no, really, I love Escape from New York that much. Midnight Express is great. It's a great film, and I've always really liked it. I saw it when I was really young, and it really messed with me. Especially like the stuff with Paul Smith that really scared me when I was a kid, and really stuck with me, and it made prison really, really a scary place. As a Turkish person in this case, Brad Davis plays he plays a real character who's sent to jail because he's caught smuggling hashish, and so he's stuck in a Turkish prison, and then of course there's this very sadistic guard played by Paul Smith who has some definitely some issues. Especially as being a dad himself. And the movie kind of draws some of that with his own relationship with his dad, and there's a lot going on in the screenplay that's really, really interesting and well done. Oliver Stone wrote the screenplay. This is an Oscar winner for best screenplay. So this is the only Oscar-winning movie on my list, and won 2 Oscars. It won another very important Oscar. It won. Did John Hurt win Best Supporting Actor? And if he didn't, he deserved to. But it won the Oscar for Best Score by Giorgio Moroder. And the score is phenomenal. I think Giorgio Moroder's music in general is great. And I count some of my favorite music in movies. And this is a score that really stays with me, too, with as many other scores that he did throughout the 80s. And I love it, absolutely. And it helps the story. It helps build tension when it needs to build tension, but also a sense of hope throughout the movie. And by the end of the movie, you don't feel too, stressed out that... I mean, you do feel that stress that the character goes through. You feel those emotions the character goes through, but the movie does leave that sense of hope or light at the window that he will possibly get out of this very grave situation. And Brad Davis, I think, is especially good in this movie. I think he's a bit underrated in his performance. I know he was nominated and all that, but I don't feel like no one talks about Brad Davis as much as they do with John Hurt and other aspects of this movie. I think he's a really good actor, and he was a really good actor, I should say, as he since passed away. But I think he's especially good in this film, and you really do feel everything that he feels in this movie. He's very expressive, and I don't know. I've always liked this film a lot. I think it just really stays with me. Again, Paul Smith is really scary. Randy Quaid is really annoying, but that's what his character really is supposed to serve up.
It's a good role for him, yeah.
Exactly. Just where the movie goes and the honest places it goes too, and with the movie's relationship with the other prisoners and the relationship when his girlfriend comes in later in the story. I don't know. I've always loved this film, and I really do think it's a special film, and definitely one of Alan Parker's best films. I also like Fame a lot that he's made, and a few other things that he's done. So, but I definitely go back to this one from time to time again. Revisiting on Blu-ray for sure. It really kind of stayed with me more. It really struck a chord with me. It just reminded me of how powerful a film it is, and how much I love it. How about you?
So, I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to comment on this movie as an Armenian. If you want to ask me about Turkish justice, that's a whole other podcast. But, right. All kidding aside, this is a movie that I've been aware of my entire life. As long as I've been aware of movies, I've known that this movie exists, and I've kind of avoided it. I just thought it was, gonna be so much of a downer and so hard to watch, and why do I want to put myself through that? I feel like it really has a reputation, and I'm glad you picked it because it kind of forced me to watch it. Mm-hmm. And it was available on Amazon streaming, and it's a really good movie. It's really powerful. It's sad. It's really harrowing. I don't know if I think maybe that's the word I would use to describe it. Mm-hmm. Because there were actually, I think this is the only movie of all the movies we've discussed where I kept checking the runtime, but it wasn't because I wanted it to be over. I wanted to see if something good was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this might work out. Let me see how much time is left in the movie. Nope, that's not going to work out either. And it just keeps getting worse. And, I guess it's based on a true story. I'd have to read up on that, but it doesn't seem too far-fetched at all. And it's tough. I mean, I remember, if I'm not mistaken, this is just while we're talking about it right now, but I want to say Paul L. Smith is in the Popeye movie, right?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Which is a movie that I loved when I was a kid.
And one of our favorite movies of all time.
Which one?
Pieces.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have known that. Of course, Pieces. Yeah, he's great in Pieces. And One of the best red herrings ever, I'd say.
Totally.
And I just, I mean, I don't know. I guess it was just really hard watch, and I'm glad I saw it. I feel like it's an important movie. I feel like I might have gained a few IQ points or something from watching this at the end of watching all of these other movies. And this was the last one I watched, actually. So it's kind of interesting to go from Lock Up and The Naked Cage and Destroyer and Death Warrant and like all these movies, and then kind of end on Midnight Express. So I don't know. I think that kind of it was good to do that. It was different, and at that point, a lot of those movies, because you wouldn't normally watch them all so closely, they did kind of have that danger of like blending together a little bit, and like, oh wait, which one did this happen in, which one did that happen in, and you're not gonna have that problem with Midnight Express. You're gonna know exactly which one that was and exactly what happened in it, and I guess I'd say thanks for making me watch it, because I do feel like it's an important movie, and I just kind of had to be pushed to making myself watch a grown-up movie. So
I felt the same way with Cool Hand Luke, so we kind of got one each for that. We're watching these grown-up, more serious kind of takes on the prison, the world of prison and movies, but I think they're both rewarding in different ways, and sobering too in many ways, and hopefully we'll keep out of trouble, but also remain keep that anti-authoritarian ideas in our heads, so we could be part Midnight Express, we could be part Cool and Luke, but also be part like Snake Plissken. Like, I feel like that's what the big takeaway from these prison pictures is blending all of these kind of characterizations and ideas about the world of prison, as outlandish as they are, as how serious they could be. I think it's interesting to me. It's a subgenre that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did while revisiting all these movies, and I really feel like I have a newfound appreciation for them. And I don't know, I really enjoyed taking this journey with you, and I thank you for bringing it up as a subject, because I feel like I could watch like a few of these other titles in this list that I haven't gotten to because I keep pushing off, because do I really want to watch a prison movie? Now I feel like I can go into them knowing what more to expect and to enjoy the certain aspects of them, and
I was just gonna say, I felt so guilty kind of suggesting like, oh hey, let's talk about prison movies, and then the first thing I thought of was like, I don't really feel like watching The Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption, and like, I know they're good movies, like please nobody get me wrong, it's just I'd rather go see Escape from New York or something like that, but I think that I have a newfound appreciation for the genre too, and just kind of watching these all together. I was gonna say just one last thing about Midnight Express. I don't know if you mentioned that Snitch character.
Yes.
Oh my god! I think of all the movies we watched. Right? With all these villains and all these despicable characters and all these movies, I don't think there was anybody I hated more than that guy.
Oh yeah,
sure. It's, I mean, that's a well-written character when you get that kind of response. And well performed, of course, and
agreed.
Just I mean, these movies, obviously there's a lot of range. It's funny because I did kind of suggest this as a topic, but I realize now that we've started talking about them and having heard all these other movies, like I have so much more to learn about the subgenre and so many more movies to see, and I think it's kind of something that needs to be, maybe I need to sneak some more of these in between all the action movies and slasher movies and everything else we get to. And thankfully a lot of these are getting good releases now. I think we've mentioned Scream Factory about 10 times today. So
well, I know that Jeff Nelson from Scream Factory, he has affinity for a lot of these movies, so that's why we've been seeing some of them too. So,
totally
so hopefully we'll get more coming our way. I'm excited for that. And thank you again. This has been really, really fun, and hopefully we'll get together and talk about some more stuff on a podcast, because I've been having a lot of fun talking these movies with you. Thank you again, Ara. It's been really, really fun.
Oh, hey, thanks, Meep. I mean, I've never done a podcast before, never expected to, but I'm so honored that you'd have me on your show, man. I'm a big fan, so thanks a lot.
And thank you, all of you supporters of the show, and on Patreon. It means a lot to keep the show going, and I really feel the love. And I say it every time, but I don't take it for granted. I really do mean that. I really feel like it keeps me going, and I want to continue doing it. So thank you for 50 episodes of Retro Movie Love and these 5 past Patreon episodes, and here's some more in the future. And thank you again, Ara, for joining me. So we'll see you next time on the podcast, and thank you again.
See you, bud.
See you guys. Ciao for now.
Call me Snake.
Joey, have you ever been in a Turkish prison?